Hello. Welcome. Um, we are here talking about lots of stuff, talking about ice, talking about fire, talking about blood. Um, so where to start? So I wanted to I'd really hoped to get this one. I've been working on a number of things, but I've been working on an overanalyzing, and I'd gotten to a section on Luthor Largent, and um, and I'm kind of spoiling some of the stuff that I'm going to put in this overanalyzing, but I wanted to talk about this character, Luthor Largent, who probably will not be in the show. I mean, we don't hear about him being in the show. Um, but Luthor Largent is a very suspicious character, and I do wonder if he is in fact aligned with Larry Strong. Now, this sounds very, very crazy, because not much of the stuff like comes up or is explicitly talked about in Fire and Blood. Fan community has not talked about this at all. So when I say like, oh, Larry Strong and Luthor Largent were in league with each other, it's going to sound a bit crazy, but hear me out on this whole thing. Because especially considering people largely think of Larry Strong as being pro-green, and people largely think of Luthor Largent as being pro-black. But I will say that, so I have no memory who this character is. And here's the thing. Luthor Largent, and his role is expanded a bit in Fire and Blood versus the Princess and the Queen. He is the head of the Gold Cloaks at the beginning of the war and throughout. And his role is rather important because he, of course, allows King's Landing to fall to Rhaenyra because he's in control of the Gold Cloaks. Now, but here is the weird thing, and there's a whole bunch of weird things about Luthor Largent. So when the Greens take over King's Landing in the wake of Viserys' death, they go and they interview all of the men of the who run the gates in the Gold Cloaks. And they interview these men, and they determine certain ones to be loyal and certain ones to be not loyal enough. And they have them replaced. And the same, they take the head of the Gold Cloaks and they replace him with Luthor Largent. And so at some point, like, this isn't just like there was some oversight where they left Luthor Largent in place. One could perhaps argue that Luthor Largent was in place in Princess and the Queen, but definitely not in Fire and Blood. It's specifically, George R. R. Martin puts in that the head of the Gold Cloaks, we don't know his name, they interviewed him, they thought he wasn't loyal enough, and they put in Luthor Largent. And so the Greens actually actively picked a pro-black person to be put in the most important position in the Gold Cloaks in the wake of the war. Had they left in this nameless guy, we might have been fine. I mean, they might have been fine. Like, we don't know if this nameless guy was pro-black or pro-green or whatever. But Luthor Largent was definitely handed the city over to Rhaenyra. And so it's a really, really weird thing that the Greens, after going through the effort of actually interviewing everybody and determining whether or not they were pro-black or pro-green, determined that the current guy, not loyal enough to the Greens, let's put in Luthor Largent, who should be even more pro-green, turns out acts in a way that's super pro-black. And so we don't know it doesn't say who exactly made this decision. We know that the Green Council did it. So one could argue that, maybe it was Tywin Lannister that made this mistake. Maybe it was, Grand Maester Orwyle who made this mistake. But we got to remember who has experience in interviewing, who has experience in, and the answer is, of course, Larys Strong. Larys Strong is the Lord Confessor. He was a confessor before this for decades when he first came. If there's one guy who knows how to interview people and would be doing interviews, it would be Larys Strong. And so maybe you could argue that this was some sort of joint decision, but Larys Strong was, at least in part, probably in the majority of the decision, put Luthor Largent in place. And then we hear about Luthor Largent a few other times. When Blood and Cheese happens, he can't find Cheese. They do a search, can't find him. That's really weird. Cheese can't be found. Now, I believe that Cheese can't be found because Cheese is Larys Strong. But even if he's not, Luthor Largent lets him through his fingers. And then, additionally, when Aegon and his family are spirited out of the city by Larys Strong, Luthor Largent reports that they pass through none of the gates. Now, maybe Larys Strong knows a secret tunnel, underneath the walls. But it may also be that he was allowed out, that that Aegon and the family was allowed out, and that Luthor Largent is like Larys Strong in that he's playing both sides. I think, next time you read Fire and Blood and you're going through it, definitely, pay attention to what Luthor Largent is doing. It seems chaotic, these are pretty big screw ups. These are outrageous screw ups that change the course of the war. Each of these things, letting Aegon out of the city, that's a pretty big screw up, considering what happens later. Being unable to find Cheese is a pretty big screw up that changes the course of the war. Luthor Largent, giving over the city to Rhaenyra and having that screw up with the Green Council, alters the course of the war. And so I do think that there's something suspicious going on with Luthor Largent. In general, George R. Martin added more Luthor Largent stuff when he did Fire and Blood. So I think he wanted to really pump up how important this character was. We even get this artwork of him in the book. And so it's worth looking into. I think it's a very fun theory. I've never heard anyone else talk about this. I think I'm the first person that talked about Larys being Cheese. Now people talk about this. Now Luthor Largent being in league with Larys Strong, I think is something to look for in the future. It's too bad Luthor Largent isn't going to make it into the show. Luthor Largent, by the way, is in many ways paralleled with the Mountain. He's really huge. He's famous for killing a horse with one blow. It's very clear that Luthor Largent, in the same sense that he's, I think he's almost 8 feet tall, just like the Mountain. But you're talking about Luthor Largent, just like Robert Strong. Oh, you're strong, and oh, I see. But then you're like, oh, we're talking about the Strongs. Well, then we have Larys Strong too. You get these weird connections. But he was given this very ridiculously blunt name, Luthor Largent. Just like Robert Strong. Oh, he's strong, is he? Okay, By the way, I never liked the strong puns that are in the story. I think it's I think it's like Bond, where it's set up for him, oh, your name's Pussy Galore. Oh, you're like she's never heard that a million times. Oh, you're so clever for coming up with that pun right there, James Bond, for the audience. But it would never be clever. She'd roll her eyes and be like, dude, I've heard that a fucking million times. What are you fucking talking about? Do you think I've never, Christmas Jones, do you think Christmas Jones has never had sex with a man before who talked about Christmas coming? Do you think that never happened? We all sit there in the movie going, ha ha ha, he made a pun about Christmas coming. You think Christmas Jones has never had sex with a man before and no other man came up with that joke? it's the same thing with like these strong boys. Yes. Anyway, we are back. Let's get into some super chats. The Watcher. Oh, I think the Watcher had something else before we get into an also, but I'll get back to the Watcher. Watcher's bringing up Star Wars here. May and Osha do in fact not have the hairstyle. They only looked quite similar. May has a long version of the haircut while Osha has a bob. Or, the Watcher says, I'm no girl, but was in the 90s where every white girl had it. That we're talking about the Rachel and stuff. And Honest would say that siblings have a similar taste in hair. They also appear different colors, with Osha having much more rootage. I also I noticed that instantly in episode 1 when we saw Osha on the ship, me going, oh, thank God she cut her hair or took those ridiculous extensions out. The bangs with the layers in the front might just be very popular. Black girl hailstar on the galaxy far, far away. Discord request, please overanalyze. Okay. So I made this joke. So Carmine and I did a review of the Acolyte. It's on his channel. I thought the Acolyte was pretty good. Carmine thought it was very average. I was comparing it to all of their Star Wars. Carmine, it was just comparing. I think it was comparing it to all of the media. So, but nonetheless, I thought Acolyte was pretty good. By the way, it's so ridiculous, like that video, because Star Wars fans out there, there is a ridiculous toxic Star Wars fandom that I did not realize was like, I knew it was an element, but I didn't realize like how incredibly widespread it was, like how bad the stuff is with Star Wars. Like the fact that like every other comment on Carmine's video is like, this show is woke. And you're like, there's nothing woke about it other than the fact that like the protagonist is a black woman. Like that's it. Like it's not like they're dealing with any, like it's a murder mystery kind of thing. Like there's no like politics in it at all. But just the fact that it has a black woman as the lead, like instantly woke show. Like oh my God. And also Carmine showed me so in our data, we can actually look at real dislikes versus like the fake dislikes, because the YouTube actually can register the same accounts with IP addresses. So like when people go to alt accounts, like it doesn't create a second dislike in like your core data. And it's like it turns out like the dislikes, like and I'm talking 75% of the dislikes are like alt accounts, meaning like these people are like really going out of their way on Carmine and me. Like we're random nobodies talking about Star Wars, like especially in our Star Wars coverage is pretty small. Obviously our Ice and Fire coverage is larger, but like, why are you going out of your way to like log into alt account after alt account after alt account to put in like 100 downvotes on us saying that a show is pretty good or like mid? Like insane. I had no idea how bad it was. But like I realize now that when people talk about ratioing online, it's meaningless. Like ratioing is meaningless. Anyway, back to the haircuts. The Watcher, you make a very good point. When I looked at it, like first thing I was like, they have the same haircut, which made me think it was the same character. I think you're supposed to think that. But then I was like, isn't it a remarkable coincidence that these two characters like chose the same haircut? And we kind of had a laugh about it. But the Watcher's saying that the looks are actually different, and maybe it's like having the Rachel, like maybe it's a popular haircut at this time, and two people choosing it is not too bad. Somebody else posted something that was pretty logical too. They said, I bet haircuts are done by droids, and you're just like, give me droid haircut 58, and they just happen to both pick droid haircut 58 because, you know, they're twins, so they have similar hair. So they'd be like, give me droid haircut 58, you know? So, I mean, once it's explained out, you're like, yeah, I suppose it's not too much of a coincidence that they would have the same haircut. And as you're saying, it's not, after close examination, they're not exactly the same, but, you know, it was a small thing that we had to laugh about. It was nothing that I really like to, you know, look at seriously. I mean, Star Wars is ridiculous with their hair anyway. Like, we can talk about, first of all, how does Han Solo get frozen in carbonite with one haircut and comes out with a completely different haircut? Okay, because that happens in Star Wars too. Also, like the amount of time it would take to like put on the various like weavings and everything for like Princess Leia at different times is ridiculous. Like, if you look at like how much time they took to like put braids in Leia's hair at the Ewok village, or the amount of time they put with like creating this big like beehive thing. Like, what is like the Rebel Alliance? Like, what are you guys doing? I guess, you know, spending money on these hair droids and weird hair extensions, but it's hair has always been outrageous in Star Wars. Let's be honest. I mean, but anyway, but back to Watcher also saying, please explain to me how Trump is convicted of 34 felony counts and still somehow a candidate for president. My European brain can't comprehend. Well, there's a couple things going on with the right-wing movement in America. I mean, many people talk about how Trump is actually just a symptom of something that's very broken in American politics, and it is true to some extent. That this has been this shift in America towards like just crazy open right, like ideology is like, I'd say the xenophobic open Christian nationalist kind of talk that's now appeared in America. It was kind of always there, but it was a little more hidden, but it was there. And now it's kind of masks off. Like, we're, you know, the right wing has always put on this, like, oh, we're you know, we're going to have this respectable, way of going about things. And how dare Bill Clinton, like sully the White House by, you know, lying under oath about a blowjob, you know? Oh, and then now we're fine with a felon who paid off a porn star after having sex with them, for hush money, you know, somehow like that's okay with the same group of people, you know, 25 years later. But it's been a long shift. It's been a long shift in like the shift to Christian nationalism and it being open about it. I mean, in the 90s, there was subtle stuff. There's subtle anti-immigrant stuff. And now it's like straight up the candidate is saying, let's build concentration camps and round them up. You know, that Trump is literally saying that. It's bad. Obviously, I'm very worried about America, but I think, you know, I've worried about its trajectory for a long time. And this election is very important, not just because I think Trump would be disastrous, but also like if Trump, like the American political system, as much as they teach us in school that it's genius and the founders were geniuses, there's a lot of things that are fundamentally wrong. So we have an incredibly powerful branch of government called the Supreme Court, and like idiots, like fucking idiots, we have given them lifetime, like they can serve for life. Dumbest thing, like so stupid. Why would anyone design a system like that? It's just, and not to mention like the fact that like some areas get more representation than other areas, like rural areas get more representation than urban areas. And this was in place because back in the day, they didn't fully trust democracy. And they're like, well, the landowners are the intelligent ones. Can we really trust all these, you know, before it was just landowners who could vote. But still, there's this belief that like, oh, we don't really fully trust democracy, like equal representation. So landowners like, and so now we're stuck with the situation where rural people get more vote than urban people, which shifts things weirdly. But if this election does not go well, like it is kind of, I do say it's kind of over for America, but like we have 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Currently 6 of them are 5 of them are far right wing. 1 is slightly right wing, and 3 of them are liberals. So, and 3 of those far right wingers were put in by Trump, and they're all in their 50s. One's 51, one's 53, and one's 57. It's like they're going to be on for another 25 years. Okay. So we do have 2 extreme right wingers who are in their 70s. Now, if Trump is elected, they will retire and they will be replaced with 2 more people in their 50s, which means there will be a conservative majority on the Supreme Court for a generation. Like it's done. Like and we saw what they've done so far with banning abortion and things like that. And there's just crazy decisions that have been made in the last 25 years, like allowing vouchers to go to religious schools. Like that has happened in America. So now the federal government has been like supporting religious schools in America, which is a crazy, crazy shift when you think of like strange right-wing things that have happened to America in the last 25 years. Like public funding for religious schools, banning abortion, making gun ownership and like assault weapons like untouchable. Like anyone can get a freaking assault weapon. And now like the fact that semi-automatic rifles are now commonplace in the population is just insane. It's insane what's happened to America in the last 25 years. So I'm saying like Americans are Americans are fucked up, and Americans are fucked up because, you know, poor media literacy and things like this. But 2, like our system is also fucked up in that it gives more representation for rural areas. So it doesn't, like our government doesn't really represent the population right. But also it's just like, yeah, Trump, like people have a cult-like attachment to him. So it's really weird, you know? And other Republicans haven't mastered how to be Trump well enough. I mean, they will. Another person's going to rise. But like the fact that like that only Trump can do Trump, and no one in the Republican Party, they couldn't find a candidate that was as popular as Trump, is insane to me. So, I mean, it's hard for me to comprehend sometimes too, but it's love refs to real events. Seeing as how it may have been a plot, what would you take for the fanfic to feature the Erfurt latrine disaster? There's one thing the audience won't see coming. It's a brown wedding. This I have not heard about. Erfurt latrine disaster. Oh my goodness. The Erfurt latrine disaster occurred on July 26th, 1184. The combined weight of the assembled nobles caused the wooden second story of the building to collapse. Most of the attendants fell through into the latrine cesspit below the ground floor, and there were about 60 of them drowned in liquid excrement. Oh my God. This event was called the Erfurt Latrinensurus in several German sources. Oh my God. That's you know, oh God. You know, this is one of those things that like George R. R. Martin would do, but at the same time, like mimicking George R. R. Martin, you feel like you can't do it, you know? There is that weird thing about like when being like doing fanfic or doing something in the legacy of somewhere else, you feel like you can't necessarily be as bold. Because someone will be like, well, that's they would never do that. And you're like, well, you forget that they would do something unexpected, or they would do something super gross. Like having the floor break and having a bunch of people drown in shit. Yeah, that's something George R. R. Martin would completely do. He loves poop jokes. It's visceral. It's horrible. It's disgusting. It's just, can there be anything worse? But yeah, it's like one of those things where like, yeah, George would do it, but I don't know if we could. Like that would be really, people would remember that and be like, the Preston James fanfic, the Sweet Robin fanfic had a bunch of people drowning in shit. And you're like, oh my God. Like, oh man, that is, yeah, that's, I mean, I know what you're saying. I have to think on that, but man, oh man, it's exactly something George would do. If like he had thought of that, he'd be like, latrine disaster it is, you know? Oh my gosh. Discord requests you tweet people who overanalyze Ice and Fire are lazy clout chasers, taking a series nobody cares about anymore and milking it dry, and then announce the next overanalyzing video. Yeah, I could maybe do that. The it is kind of funny though about the project, like there, so that like clout chasing and grifter and things like this, like once people start using them as criticisms for one thing, then everybody starts using it in projection reverse. It's sort of like, do you guys remember when fake news actually meant fake news? Like it was like, oh, what do we do about fake news? What do we do about like Newsmax? And then all of a sudden the right wingers, specifically Trump, were like, CNN fake news. And then all of a sudden like the word lost its meaning. Like there was a time where like specifically like these fake news sites were coming up and people were believing them over like legitimate news sites. And then once Trump came in and was like fake news, like now everything's fake news and you can't use it. So the similar thing is happening with clout chaser and grifter. Like there's obviously there's a whole bunch of people that go online and like do videos that they don't really believe in, but they know will like stock out outrage, and they're doing it just for money. They don't give a shit, you know. Like we're talking about the nerdrotics in the world, right? Like the grifters. But now everybody's like, now I've heard grifter, like I've heard people like calling Carmine grifter, like or me grifter, like for giving like a middle of the road like review of a Star Wars like property. Like how is that? Like do you think like anyone is clicking for, do you think anyone is outraged at pretty good review? Like no. Like people get outraged for, you know, this is totally woke, oh my God, the agenda. Like that's what people click in the outrage. No one is clicking for, yeah, you know, it was all right. Like no one, that's not a review anymore. But the same with like clout chasers. Like what am I, like what clout would anybody be seeking with like overanalyzing Ice and Fire? like this incredibly small community, like, you know, going around like, oh yeah, I want clout. I want people to respect me because I've overanalyzed Ice and Fire. That gives me all of my respect, you know. I've got all these people that are like, oh man, what a dude, doing it all for clout. All right. Where are we at? Doesn't Jaime think of Tysha twice in A Song of Ice, in A Storm of Swords? Tyrion, his little brother, who loved him for a lie, but for that one time, but the imp did not know. So yeah, I've talked about the loving for a lie issue before, but that's something else. But yes, I definitely think you're right that he does but for that one time, but the imp did not know. Yeah, that's definitely a reference to Tysha. As for Tyrion, his little brother who loved him for a lie. So in the fanfic, in the Jaime chapter right now, I'm trying to fix the trying to make this work, because George R. R. Martin, like, he doesn't really make sense when he writes this. The end of A Clash of Kings, when Jaime is talking to Catelyn, he says, I find it strange that I'm reviled for my finest act, and I'm loved. I'm loved for a kindness I didn't do, or something. And some people could argue that if that were just by itself, like, you could argue that it's Robert loving him for a kindness he didn't do. But then it gets worse, because then he specifically says that Tyrion loved him for a lie. And so you're like, oh, so it is Tyrion is the person that loves him. It's not, because before you're like, oh, Robert loves him for maybe for a kindness he didn't do but now in A Storm of Swords, it's clearly Tyrion who's loving him for the lie. But what is Tyrion loving him for? Like, he's not loving him for anything. We're going to try to fix it. I have a paragraph in there that tries to deal with it and fix it a little bit, but it's really silly. Like I don't think George knew what was in the mystery box or something when he wrote the line. Because why would Tyrion love Jaime for a lie? There's nothing to love Jaime for in that situation. He wouldn't be like, oh, thank goodness you lied to me, But yeah, I think yeah, both in those situations you could argue would be Tysha. I mean, absolutely the second one, but yeah, you could definitely make the argument with the first one. But I think it's a little screw up. I mean, the whole Tysha story, someone pointed out to me, and again, trying to fix this in the Jaime 1 chapter. So hopefully when it comes out, people will like it. But I have there is a flashback to Jaime thinking about Tysha, and very explicitly in the Jaime 1 fanfic, and which we're going to try to fix this line, the little brother who loved him for a lie, and also fix the other things that are wrong with it. So, for instance, when you read the story, you kind of don't think that this is Jaime is a full-grown man. Like, he's a Kingsguard. He is a King Slayer. He is a father at this point. He is not a little kid. He's 21-year-old man. And yet he just crumbles to his daddy and is like, okay, I'll lie to him. And you're like, does that sound like Jaime Lannister? He already like stood up to his dad when he joined the Kingsguard, right? Like, and that was like 5-6 years earlier. So it's really weird that, like, Jaime 1, he makes this like character regression, but 2, that like a 21-year-old man who's a Kingsguard who doesn't live with his dad, who has like chosen this other life, is going to crumble to him and be like, yeah, I'm sorry. Tysha was I made up this whole lie. Like, the whole Tysha story is kind of silly. So we're trying to fix it a little. Dany, born 9 moons after escaping King's Landing, when she was just a quickening in her mother's womb. Quickening happens at 4 to 5 months. Author error or Lemongate. I think I would say that there's some argument on what the meaning of quickening is. I mean, let's see. I mean, I'm not sure what the quickening happens at the 4 to 5 months means. I mean, naturally quickening just means to speed something up. And then we kind of have this other feeling of to make alive, right? Or to become enlivened. And then somehow people talk about like it in the weird birthing term of like, oh, it's coming to life. Like it's a slow process of 9 months to come to life. um, to enter into a phase of active growth and development, the seeds quickening in the soil. So I don't think like, I don't know if quickening can be pinpointed to a particular time in the womb. I think people use quickening for the entire period of time. Like in fact, because you're talking about like 4 to 5 months, like some sort of point of viability or something. But no one would be thinking about it in that terms. It's be, just growing, coming to life or something. I mean, I think, today modernly we talk about maybe quickening as when like fetuses start kicking, or something like that. But I don't think, I think in this way, it's just being talking about like when seeds are quickening in the soil, they're just developing or something like that. I don't think it's anything like that, anything meaningful like that. And keep in mind, George R. R. Martin has no children. He doesn't know anything about childbirth or anything like that. But there's all sorts of little mistakes like that. But I don't think it's anything that means anything. I mean, it's only like I'm trying to think of when it even came to be that quickening meant movement in the uterus. Because like that's it was believed the quickening marked the moment of the soul entering the fetus, ensoulment. Oh, in early Christianity. I see what you're saying here. Now with like, at some point in Christian history, there was a point where they thought that when the fetus starts kicking, that it actually got its soul, and that was the quickening point, and that, yeah, I think George is just misusing the term quickening then, or like in Westeros they have a different definition of what quickening means. Times were 9 moons when she was just a quickening in her mother's womb. Plus a quickening. Because how can you be a moment? Like the quickening is a moment. So how can you be a quickening, right? Let me see this. This is so random. Yeah, that's the only time we hear quickening in that sense. Quicken? Oh, here we go. In other places in Ice and Fire, George uses quicken to mean something else. Let me show you this. I'm glad you brought this up because this is really, it's a large rabbit hole on like the history of when people thought things were alive and stuff like that. Strangely enough, in the Middle Ages, so I did weirdly for a lot of videos and stuff and commentary with House of the Dragon for first season. There's a lot of discussion about if in a birthing situation would somebody do C-sections and cut out a baby. And the thing is actually, historically speaking, people they would always kill the coming baby rather than the woman, and that actually the House of the Dragon scene is not very historically accurate, which is very odd because that means like the actual like respect for women in the birthing process has actually gone down over time. But there is actually a logical reason for this, and that's because usually today male doctors, or there was a movement from female midwives birthing children to male doctors birthing children, and you have a shift from the respect for the mother's life in this period. So, you know, you're so there, but also like when you study like Christian texts, like at no point like did they believe that that there was a soul in the baby yet. And so therefore, if you wanted to go in and like smash up the baby so you could pull it out and save the mother's life, like that was perfectly fine, you know. But yeah, at different times people have different ideas. So this weird modern belief that like souls could be given when sperm met egg and stuff like that is really quite recent. I mean, coming in like the 1970s and stuff. Really weird kind of ideas. But this is where we are in our society. But yes, other parts of Ice and Fire. She could feel his seed within her. She prayed that it might quicken there. So like he's using quicken as definitely something like a pregnancy, like probably like attaching, you know, they don't know this much about birthing, but yes, like pregnancy, the attachment of a fertilized egg to the uterine wall. And his seed is quickened, I think, something like that. Womb quickens again. See, they talk about the womb quickening. The womb quickening, rather than like, because it seems like what you're talking about, dash of bitter. I always want to say dash of biter. That yeah, the belief was that there was this moment when it started kicking, and that's when the soul came in, and that was the quickening. George is using it completely differently. He's using it to mean get pregnant, that a womb can quicken. That's complete. Yeah, that doesn't seem to have any historical, from what I can tell, any historical basis. So he's just using the term quicken wrong. So, I mean, I'm glad we went down this weird. Glad we went down this weird rabbit hole, but man, kind of interesting. Anyway, the City Watch being secret blacks is kind of weird, since in Clash, Tyrion and Bronn took it over pretty easily from Littlefinger. It's funny because I've definitely thought about. There was definitely a time where I did research like who was in control of the City Watch and whether it made a difference. I think because he puts Adam Marbrand, and I remember going in and being like, oh, this is probably a bad idea or something, based on like who Adam Marbrand might support, right? Because he becomes the head of. But then, he's not. Is he City Watch? He's commander of the City Watch. Oh, he's quit off. Okay. I mean, he's moved off because he later joins Jaime in the Riverlands. So who's commander after Adam Marbrand? Sir Adam is relieved of his duties. In place, she puts, of course, Osfried Kettleblack. But he's removed by the small council, and they put Humphrey Waters in. Okay. I mean, I do feel like the I do feel like this choice of Humphrey Waters, and we know nothing about Waters because he's a bastard, but I do feel like this movement, removing Kettle Black and removing Marbrand and putting in Humphrey Waters, I bet you Humphrey Waters is like secret Aegon supporter or something, like, right? It's just, it has to be like, why would they bother doing this like switch and then put in somebody where we don't know their house? You know, I bet Humphrey Waters is is like a bastard of a house that actually like is super pro Aegon or something, maybe Blackfires or something. I bet that's the case. But yeah, I think, I mean, it is ridiculous that people are pro Daemon after 25 years. But maybe if they're all just loyal to Luthor Largent or something, and Luthor Largent just gets everybody's commands or something strange like that. But yeah, because I'm trying to think, 25 years, I mean, you're talking a less, like, for Targaryen loyalists to be in the City Watch, we're talking about a less, like a shorter amount of time, right? In our main story. So like Aegon coming in and having support of the City Watch because there's people left over from Aerys's days, and Humphrey Waters being a secret Targaryen supporter is completely there. But yeah, I guess like them being Tyrion and Bronn taking it over pretty easy. Like, I guess they just didn't care. They didn't have that much. They didn't have any investment in Stark versus Lannister versus Baratheon or whatever. Their real loyalties are with the Targaryens. But the other thing, Cersei though, like most of the City Watch was hired by Cersei though. So like they should really all be loyal to Cersei, considering that she gave the majority of them their job. Like, she's the one that increases the City Watch numbers. So they should be all loyal to Cersei. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, we won't see what happens because Winds of Winter is never coming out. But nonetheless, I still say we'll see what happens. Yeah, thoughts on show Alicent and Cole banging supposedly. Yeah, no, it's I do think it's interesting because there was a deleted scene where Alicent talks about how she really liked Criston Cole, or she had a crush on him. We get a slight hint of this, I guess, if you go all the way back to the first episode. She and Rhaenyra are both talking about how he's cute at the tourney, and then we have her making that weird comment like, "Do this for the love you show me," or whatever. So there's some seeds of it. So I think it seems like seems normal, right? That like Alicent would be banging Cole in the show. It just seems like something that would happen, that she wants, especially if she's looking for loyalty, right, among people. And if we're doing if we're doing the whole Cersei parallel, I mean, Cersei was banging the Kettle Blacks, right? So I'm waiting to see why she's banging him. Is she banging him because she likes him? Is she banging him because she wants to control him? Is it both? Because it can be both. She can both like him and want to manipulate him at the same time. Plus they've also like established that in the first season that Alicent was very upset that she never got to like have her youth and party, right? Like, we have an entire episode where like she's home taking care of babies while Rhaenyra's out on the town. So it does make sense, show that she would be looking to party. Like, she's now like liberated and free of Viserys and things like that. If she wants to bang Criston Cole, I guess this kind of makes sense in some respects. Plus, like, the show needs its sex, it needs its intrigue. I guess all that. I think it weirdly fits. I'm certainly not against it in any respect of Alicent and Cole banging. Like, why not? Go for it. Um, hair keeps growing after you die, so probably still changes while frozen. Carbonite slowly dissolves hair, idiot. Okay. Um, yeah. Let's see. Hey, Preston, super fan. Would love your thoughts on Game of Thrones being based on real events. I'm an Aussie and enjoy King Charles's birthday. Um, I mean, obviously we know that there's a lot of the War of the Roses that is in Ice and Fire. Specifically, issues of like Anne Boleyn being accused of adultery and things like this, with Marjorie being accused of adultery. A lot of characters being similar, things being compared to like the anarchy and events with Richard III and stuff like this. It's all there. The problem is that like you can't look at the War of the Roses events and like glean any future, because George kind of picks randomly and in random orders on which things are going to be in there. So there's a lot of real events that are in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's just it's hard to then predict the future on what's going to happen, because he just kind of takes an element of something, and then but that's it. And yeah, so let's see here. Thoughts on deer hunting every November in the Midwest. Deer hunting is funny. So in America, we have a huge like overpopulation of deer, and this happens because deer is what we call a frontier animal, where like if you have a full forest, deers don't thrive that well. Field deers don't thrive that well, but on the border of where like a field meets a forest, where you have like shrubbery and stuff, like this is where like deer like just love it. And so when you think of American suburbs or a road going through a forest, where all of a sudden you have shrubbery coming against from a road to forest, all of a sudden like deer populations explode when you put an access road through something, or deer populations explode in suburban areas. And so also with a lot of the predators populations, being gone, not as many wolves in America anymore, things like that. All of our I forget which great cats we used to have in America. I mean, I think different places, lynx and stuff. We used to have a lot, but panthers and stuff. But like you can't have those. People don't want those around. So the deer populations are out of control in America. So obviously, like we kind of need deer to be hunted. We do. And so, if people want to go out now, look, I think hunting is a weird hobby myself, but if you can go out and just get rid of deer, that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's there's plenty of deer, way too many deer. People hit them with their cars. Might as well have people eat this meat, and rather than it being produced by cows or whatever. But it's that's it's fine. I mean, I understand that like people are like, oh, are you pro hunting? And it's like, not really. Like look, if I had the option of like guns being banned in America, I would have guns banned in America, and have like federal employees go out and or state employees go out and get rid of the deer. That's fine. But it's here. So go out and hunt your deer, enjoy yourself, whatever. Eat the venison. It's great. We got plenty of deer. It's go for it. You know. But I always say, like, do it with a one bullet at a time rifle or something. Um, love all your work. Going to Istanbul and then Lebanon in a few days. Any advice on must see places? You know, I've been to Lebanon a few times, but I've never been able to go out and see anything other than government buildings and refugee camps. So I, I wish I had good advice on Lebanon, but I just don't know the country very well. Istanbul, I know better. Obviously, you're going to see Hagia Sophia and you're going to see the Blue Mosque. It's a really nice town just to kind of wander and like down the small cobblestone streets and just talking to people. Like random strangers and random shop owners will start talking to you, and everyone's really nice. There's a crazy museum where I think there's like arms of John the Baptist and bones and skulls of various saints. It's all kind of interesting stuff, but I think it depends how long you have, but obviously you'll have, if you go to Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque and just wander and have some chicken soup for breakfast in the streets, that's all you need to do in Istanbul. It's a very beautiful city. You'll have a wonderful time. It's overwhelmingly beautiful place. And everyone I know that actually sees Lebanon, they love it. They absolutely love it. So they love Beirut, but I've never been able to properly see the country. So I'm sorry. Let's see here. Now that the right-wing parties are gaining more power in Europe, what do you think the reaction should be? I did some reading about the German and French elections, and the thing is it's weird because obviously to Europeans it's a big panic, but like it's hard to take it to be that concerned when America's in a much worse position. Like it's like you have level 4, like you have stage 4 cancer, and somebody else is like, oh, I have stage 1 cancer, and you're like, oh, really? Well, So when you talk about like Germany going to the right and everybody being very scared, and keep in mind that like a similar thing happened when I was living in Germany, and they're like, oh my gosh, like the far right party is getting like 15%, and I'm like, oh. Our far right party gets 50%, And so I think, it's a big deal when you talk about like, I think there was a 5% shift from like 11% to 16% or something in Germany. And that's a 5% shift is a huge shift. It is. But it's also hard to be like, oh, they got 16%. Like our far right party, which by the way is more extreme than your far right party, has 50%. So, and it's control of like half the states, like who they literally tried to overthrow the government last election, like you kind of, you throw these things, they banned abortion, like, and so it's hard to panic about it too much. At least from an American perspective. I think things are worse in France, but at least I know more about the German the situation. So I'm like, with the German situation, I'm like, it's not really very much to worry about. The French one is probably more serious, and I know less about French politics than German politics. But I think generally these reactions are obviously, their shifts from right to left are usually, due to, their feelings about immigrants in various years and stuff like that. But it's obviously concerning because the far right parties in both America and Europe are becoming more isolationist and less supporting of NATO. And that's really concerning to me. It's really weird. Like, this is how extreme America's become, that like our felony convicted guy who tried to overthrow the government who is leading in polls, wants to dissolve NATO and hand over Ukraine to Russia and all sorts of things. And you're like, oh my God, how does this guy have 50% of the support of American voters? It's pretty fucking crazy. So yeah, as a European, of course you're going to be scared. It's your countries if you're French or German. But it's like we're in such a worse situation in America that it's like hard to really panic about it when it's just not even close to like how bad things we have here, how bad it is here. Thank you for everything. Like you, I'm certainly chagrined about the state of things, but I wish to be more hopeful with bringing in a child. What gives you hope? What gives me hope is so what gives me hope is all the recent special elections, which showed that that Democrats are really outperforming the polls. It gives me hope that people really do care about issues. Like when the news media loves to portray the elections as this horse race, and they talk about these very effervescent, ethereal things like, how do you feel about the state of the economy? Do you think America is going in the right direction? And those aren't very concrete. But when you actually ask people about issues, you know, Social Security, abortion, like real issues, then people are like, this is how I feel, and they go out and vote. So I like, people do vote on issues more than feelings. Like, I'm not saying there aren't voters who do like have these weird feelings and they're like, I don't know if I should vote for Joe Biden or Trump. And you're like, how is that even a choice for you? But so what it does, what gives me hope is the fact that people do care about issues. And when things go bad, you know, and when things go the wrong way, they get motivated and then they go out and they try to fix things. Also, youth participation in politics excites me a lot because the youth is now voting in higher numbers than they ever had. And I really think that's a great thing, especially considering that they vote closer to, the youth tend to vote closer to what my political beliefs. So those things give me hope that, you know, people do get mobilized around real issues. And even though polls and the news media and like they try to create like these feelings that for the most part people aren't really moved very much by them, that people actually do go out and vote on issues, that most people are single issue voters that care about one fucking thing. And if you like encroach on that one issue, they're like, you know. And so what gives me hope is youth and women voting and things like that, and American, you know, perform like the previous polls, all the special elections that have happened since the Dobbs. So I do think there's hope. I mean, I do think that Joe Biden is going to win come November. But of course I'm not sure. And that gives me a lot of anxiety, but like, it's too difficult for me to believe that post Dobbs, someone would, like, the American electorate would elect Trump over what? Like, what is he offering? You know, when you look that he lost the last election, like, what makes you think, like, why would anyone go back and be like, you know what? I was undecided before, but now I'm for Trump. Like, what issues would drive them to that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. While when you say like, well, what would happen to go the other way? Well, all these women, even conservative women, like there's many that are pro-choice that are gonna go the other way to Biden. So yeah, there's hope in that sense. Like, logically speaking, when I look at the issues on the ground and what's actually happened in elections, it all looks very good for Joe Biden and the Democrats. It's only when you turn on the news and check 538 or whatever, and you're like, what? How do things look bad? You know? So when you actually look at like facts on the ground, everything looks good. So obviously it gives me anxiety, but you know, here we are. Oh, thank you, cheese crumbs. Oh, thank you, Hamza. My favorite of the Prophet's companions. Everybody's favorite of the Prophet's companions. Um, oh, it wasn't Jamie who told Tyrion a lie. It was a faceless man. That would help explain a lot. That Tyrion took all the gold and like he took just mass. I mean, Tywin took a bunch of gold and was like, "Damn it, how am I gonna deal with this situation?" Because Tyrion was hang. By the way, like Tyrion was hanging in his. He was in his sex cabin for like a week. I'm just trying. I mean, obviously this didn't happen, but being fun about it. Um, so after Tyrion gets married, he he goes to a sex cabin for a while. I'm trying to remember how long he's in the sex cabin, because that is going to. Here it is. I dared not bring my bride home to Casterly Rock, so I set her up in a cottage of her own, and for a fortnight we played at being man and wife. And then the Septon sobered up and confessed all to my lord father. Now the thing is, the Septon isn't at the sex cabin. He doesn't know when the Septon sobered up. I mean, and confessed to the father. He might have done it the next day. So we have a fortnight. Is a fortnight enough time for Tywin to send a raven to Bravos and get the faceless man to come all the way to Casterly Rock, and then to be a. I don't think it's enough time. Like it'd be close, right? He could probably get across the Narrow Sea in like 4 or 5 days, maybe. But then he has got to hit the road. He's got to ride hard from the East Coast to the West Coast, because going around, that's gonna fucking take forever. So can he ride hard and get to Casterly Rock in a fortnight in order to like pose? Unless there's faceless men like in various locations in case they're needed, like on call. Like it would make sense for an organization to have faceless men in the field to be on call. So assuming that the faceless men have people in the field on call, he could maybe pay for a faceless man to impersonate Jamie. But yeah, that totally didn't happen. I don't see why loved him for a lie as a problem. Jamie treated Tyrion like a dutiful brother, which is a lot more than he got anywhere else. No. But that's the thing, is he didn't. But that's not a lie, right? Like Jamie treated Jamie. Tyrion loves Jamie because Jamie was nice to him his whole life and was a good guy to him his whole life. That wasn't a lie. And you know, one could say like he loved him despite a lie, but he doesn't know about the lie. So is that the right way to frame the sentence? Love him for a lie? It's more like he loved him even though there was a lie he didn't know about. Like that's the truth of it, right? My brother loved me except for because he didn't know about the lie. But like loved him for a lie is a weird thing, because this is loved him for a lie. Like he did something, he lied to him at some point. Like dude, I think you're a fantastic guy, but he doesn't think he's a fantastic guy. Then that's love him for a lie. But just Jamie's never lied about that. Like he's never, like what did Jamie ever tell to Tyrion that was a lie that would make Tyrion love him? it just doesn't fit. Like I've, and like I say, in the fanfic, and hopefully, when it's out, it'll probably, in a month or two, when the Jamie fanfic is out, hopefully like 6 weeks, but hopefully, something a month maybe. I'm trying not to be like, oh my god, I gotta wait so long, but yeah, I think it did the best I could in trying to make sense of it. But I don't see what it is that Jamie, like, what lie is making Tyrion love Jamie? What lie? That's the thing. It just doesn't. I think Tywin just holds a lot of sway with Jamie and Tywin. I think Tywin just holds a lot of sway. A lot of sway with Jamie and Tywin. Just told Jamie she was a whore who took advantage of Tyrion. Jamie, being a very arrogant, didn't care about the real truth, so he lied. But we eventually find out that he did care. Like, we get the impression that the entire reason that he's breaking him out of prison and feels the need to confess the lie is that he did care about the real truth. Now, one could argue maybe his opinion changed over time, but what caused him to change his opinion? Like, what experience? Like, you could be like, how does rescuing Brienne from a bear pit all of a sudden make him go, maybe that time I lied about that woman being a sex worker was a thing. Maybe I should tell Tyrion that. That's the thing, is like, Jamie does know that it was like, it was a bad thing. And the whole reason he's breaking Tyrion out and confessing is because it's finally eating him up about it, after all these years. So, like, if he didn't care, he would have just forgotten or something. Like, something needs to remind him of this or something, Jamie certainly didn't believe it himself, because if he believed it himself, he wouldn't have confessed to it. So obviously he knew it was wrong, and he knew it was wrong in at least A Storm of Swords, and probably, if we're talking about the same instance at the end of A Clash of Kings with Catelyn, it's the same thing. And that's before his moral change, that Tyrion is loving him for a lie and all of this. It's obviously on his mind enough to, like, randomly bring up with Catelyn out of fucking nowhere, right? I love the fucking cat. Like, it's just such a, like, Catelyn just must be so fucking confused. Like, when he says that, like, it's such a weird thing to say. Like, here, it's kindness, right? Let's bring it up. All right. Catelyn just must be really confused about this whole thing. The Starks were nothing to me, I will say. I think it passingly odd that I'm loved by one for a kindness I never did, and reviled by so many for my finest act. Yeah. I mean, maybe this one, I mean, maybe we can divorce this one from the rest of them. Because some people, like I say, the argument that it's that he's talking about Robert. Why they should have just said, I'm loved for Robert for my kind of, but, loved me for a lie thing. I just don't, it's just trying to make sense of it. But it's just, at some point, we just have to accept that George fucked up a little. Self-reflection. Jamie thinks he should tell Tyrion the truth, the whole situation, whether Tysha is a whore or not. Let's see. We get this from Tyrion's perspective, right? Um, I mean, Jamie, it's definitely not that Jamie is unsure. Like, Jamie definitely knows that she's not a sex worker. Um, it's not ambiguous. Okay, Jamie definitely knows. He clearly says she was no whore. I never bought her for you. That was a lie that father commanded me to tell. Tysha was, she was what she seemed to be, a crofter's daughter chance met on the road. So there's no ambiguity here. Like it's not like he's like, maybe. No, like he knows it was a lie from the beginning. And then at some point, like for some reason, because Tyrion is going to be killed, and Jamie, I guess, is a different person now that he's gone on his trip with Brienne, that she's got to that he feels like he needs to break him out and like confess. But so the for a lie thing, I just don't understand like how Tyrion is loving Jamie for the lie. He's not. It's I think we just have to accept that like George wrote a bad sentence. Can someone ask George R. R. Martin what quickening means? I mean, it means when you cut off a head and lightning. Um, uh, Preston supports third trimester abortions. Confirms. I do support third trimester abortions. Um, I support abortions all the way up until till birth. That's life begins at birth. Absolutely. If you need to get a third trimester abortion, you should get a third trimester abortion. I mean, they're almost entirely done for health of the mother, and um, I mean, the desire to ban them is built on this ridiculous premise that, you know, some woman sitting around 8 months pregnant being like, I never got around to getting that abortion. I guess I should, but I'm just lazy. Like, you look at the statistics, all the third trimester abortions are done like by for medical reasons. Of course I support third trimester abortions. You all should support third trimester abortions. It's health of mother stuff. Okay? This idea that like, oh, we should like make it illegal after viability. Like, what's the point? Like, who are you helping? You know, there weren't any abortions at that point. Like, there weren't any like whatever the word to use, like life decisions versus like medical decisions. You know, there was like you know, like of course I support third trimester abortions. I support abortions all the way up until birth. You know, that's where I am. George R. R. Martin also uses wrath for wrath. Annoying. Yeah, there's a few things. You're right. Let me bring this up. So wrath or more wrath. The king was wrath. He made me wrath. He's using it correct here. It was a fit of wrath. Oh, here it is. Yeah. I mean, all right, this one I admit that like an editor probably should have caught it, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's like 100%. But here he says, even so, it would not do to draw Sir Tywin's wrath down upon us. You're right that wrath is better in this situation, but you could say draw Tywin's anger upon us. I mean, it's not like 100% wrong, but you're right that it should be wrath, not wrath. Loras Tyrell had been the last to face her wrath that day. To face her anger, to face her wrath that day. Here we go. Euron's blasphemies will bring down the drowned god's wrath upon us all. It should be wrath, but yeah, again, draw the queen's wrath down upon. He really started doing this, like bringing the wrath down upon them. Huh. Even the Northmen fear the wrath of Tywin Lannister. You know? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Does he use wrath though? Has he just forgotten that wrath is a word? I mean, he does use wrath too. I suppose. I mean, it's still like okay, but I mean, you're right that like wrath is the better word. It's not completely. I mean, it's not 100%. Like you can't imagine like bringing someone's anger down upon you, but yeah, it should be. It should be. There's some weird ones that also are odd. So George R. R. Martin loves using the term murder for like collection of birds, but like a murder is specifically ravens. I'm sorry, a murder is specifically crows. Sorry, but he uses murder for ravens too, even though it's a conspiracy of ravens and things like this. I mean, there's all sorts of little things here and there. Nobody's perfect, but did you notice that George R. R. Martin misspelled "sir" as "sir" in the entire series? Who are the A Song of Ice and Fire comparisons for Trump and Biden? When is the next Game of Thrones chapter breakdown being released? Thoughts on Abe Lincoln reading Team of Rivals? There's no comparison of Trump. There's nobody in the story that's like Trump, where like he has all of this weird blind support who he's like, you know, simultaneously like incompetent and horrible. The thing is about like the horrible characters in our story is that our characters are really like the horrible characters are really quite competent in what they do. While Trump is just kind of stumbling into everything like right and left. Thank goodness he's such a buffoon, or he would have done a lot more damage. And even when you talk about like a character like Ramsay or Tywin, generally people don't like him. You know, it's not half of the population being like, "Oh, he's so great," you know. Maybe the Mad King Aerys or something, you know, where like half the population likes him for no reason, you know, Mad King Aerys. But like just being so like just talking in gibberish, yet somehow being adored by people. Biden, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's like super experienced, who is able to do stuff because he's been doing it his entire life, but is getting kind of old. Like that's about all like you know you kind of can say about him. I mean, I suppose Pycelle might be the closest to Biden or something, you know, where the guy, when you actually listen to him, you're like, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea. But it's coming from Pycelle, so everyone thinks he's like old, you know, and lost it. But he's been doing this forever, you know. I guess maybe something like, you know. But I can't think of anybody as like just like you're both a buffoon and well loved and like viciously dangerous all at the same time. That's a tough one. Thank you, Hamza. Already said previously, I love you and Carmine. Been following for years. Absolutely love the fanfic. Look forward to new chapters being released. Oh, thank you, Stuart. I appreciate it. I mean, it's strange getting to this point where I have like a lot of emotional investment now in the fanfic that I didn't think I'd ever have. Miracles and long-lost abilities, like glass candles and Stark warging, are returning south of the wall since the Red Comet, Dany's eggs hatching. Which other abilities thought to be folklore could return, aka Crane Mormont Farman? I mean that's interesting because the magic, and because of Brandon Sanderson, people kind of think about magic systems now and in fantasy books and like them working a certain way. And I do think that Ice and Fire does have an accidental magic system. And the accidental magic system is just that George R. R. Martin was really focused on sci-fi. And so when he's translating the world over to fantasy, he's thinking about powers and abilities in a similar fashion. Which is why the magic that we see is so heavily telepathy focused. It's consciousness going into other bodies, and things like it's dreams, it's essentially telepathy, right? The other stuff that we get is maybe there's pyrokinesis, animal control, which is telepathy. And then the shadow babies, which might be telepathy as well, telepathy and telekinesis at the same time. But we don't see, for example, too much morphing, like people transforming into an animal. Yeah, the faceless men can maybe shift around their face a little. Maybe that's telekinesis. I don't know. Maybe there's some idea with glamours, but that's again kind of a telepathy thing where people believing something looks different, whether it's not actually looking different. But we don't see like objects appearing out of nowhere. We don't see summoning, for example, like just a rock appearing, gold appearing. We don't see transmutation, like an actual object changing into another object. Flesh becoming metal, flesh becoming rock. Like that just doesn't happen, right? Well, if this were like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, where there's just any magic is magic, there's wish spells, you might see that. So I don't know if we'll see anything other than the telepathy telekinesis stuff. I mean, besides time travel, but again, like George R. R. Martin has a telepathy explanation for it. So, I mean, yeah, like, do I see people, perhaps like other people having telepathic control over animals? Sure. Yeah, I could see that. Do I see people transforming into animals? No, I don't see that. I don't see people like breathing underwater, for example, or transforming dirty water into clean water, or anything like creating food out of nowhere. I mean, even when you think of like Jesus's miracles, right? You don't think like Jesus's miracles, he created food from nowhere, right? He turned water into wine. Those kinds of miracles we're not going to be seeing in Ice and Fire. We're going to see telepathy and telekinesis related, adjacent kind of objects. And that's just because that's how George R. R. Martin thinks. That's what he's familiar with. He spent years and years thinking about how characters react in a sci-fi universe, versus just, random, versus just magic, Okay. Between Cersei, Jon, and Varys, who do you think is most likely to blow King's Landing into the Narrow Sea? I think Varys has the ability to do so. I mean, we're probably talking about the wildfire, right? Underneath King's Landing, right? I mean, the wildfire Chekhov's gun is there. I think it even kind of showed up in the show a little bit, with the random wildfire stashes like blowing up here and there as an Easter egg. So I definitely think that's happening at some point. Who do I think is going to do it? Was it going to be an accident, from Dany? It doesn't, it's like Cersei's personality. Sure. You could see Cersei being that crazy. Though Cersei seems to have a little barrier against harming children, unless she's a child herself. I mean, we're not talking about like Heather Spoon, but like I'm talking about like she does seem to have a barrier against harming kids, or at least she says she does. So she would recognize that like there's children in King's Landing and that she wouldn't want to kill them. So that seems to be her barrier. Jon Con, people have brought up the interesting argument for Jon Con, and that is he wants to be like, Jon Con doesn't seem anywhere nearly close to being that evil. However, there's this weird thing where he kind of wants to be as ruthless as Tywin, and he realizes that the way to win Stony Sept was to burn the whole city down, and he didn't do that. And so I've heard an argument that because that was seeded, that he realizes that the way to really win is to be ruthless, and he's got to burn everything down. That Jon Con would be the one to burn down the city. Varys, I don't know, because it seems like, not that Varys is a good person at all or cares about like lives at all, but I think that he would see it as like not strategically a good idea. Like, how is he supposed to win over people when he's burned down a city and killed like hundreds of thousands of people? So I don't know if it would be a mistake that Varys would make. Like, how do you, so, or like, an accident with Daenerys or Aegon, a dragon accidentally starting the city on fire. So, I mean, I kind of see accident being the number one, but I do think that the Jon Con story of like thinking about Stony Sept is an interesting one. Like, what's Jon Con actually capable of? And if he got a little crazy from his grayscale, that maybe he could make a choice like that it's time to burn the whole city down. But we'll see. Let's see here. Plot hole or Tyrion remembering it wrong. Jaime became Kingsguard in 281. Tyrion Tysha marriage is about 286. Jaime should have been a Kingsguard guarding Aerys. Yes, that's one of the problems with the story. He like Jaime's just in the wrong place. Like, not only is it really weird that Jaime, 5 years after having his showdown with his dad, where he's already like stood up to his father, he then can't stand up to his father over something smaller. Now, I mean, weigh those things, right? Like, not being heir of Casterly Rock and like, choosing to like disinherit yourself so that you can go and guard the Mad King Aerys, who Tywin had a falling out with, and be the Mad King's bargaining chip and hostage for the rest of his life willingly. He's willing to stand up to his dad on that. But he's not willing to be like, hey, no, I don't think I'm going to like help you like completely destroy my brother. Like, no, I'm not going to lie about that. It's and he's doing that. Like, one thing he's doing as a 15-year-old child, and the other he's doing as a 20-year-old man. Like, he's already at this point like killed a king. He's already fathered his own children. Like he's already like so different. Like, I mean, think of any of us, like with relationship with our parents. Like who was more willing to stand up to their parents at 15 than 20? I don't, you know, it just seems weird, especially for an issue that's not as important. Like not to Jaime, obviously it's a much more important issue to Tyrion, but like it's just not an issue that he would care about. You know, it's so very, very odd. I mean, you know, unless there's like a long conversation or something about this, but you know, but like this woman's going to inherit Castle Rock because you went to the Kingsguard and things like that. But I don't know. It's weird that Jaime is in the wrong place, but that's not the weirder part. The weirdest part is him being like a 20-year-old man who's done all this crazy stuff, who is now caving to his dad when he didn't cave to his dad before. I mean, why Tyrion and like why Jaime would be in the Westerlands? You know, he was visiting home. You know, like that's it. Like I had leave. That's it. You know, went on vacation or something. I'm trying to think of any reason, or even, you know, it could be that like he's escorting a member of the family. He requests leave to like go with him, or whatever, you know. I mean, comparison wise, like Benjen is able to leave the Night's Watch, travel for 3 weeks to Winterfell to go to a party, to travel 3 weeks back. You know, he left his order to do something fun and personal. Jaime maybe could be allowed to go do something fun and personal for a little bit of time, you know. So I don't know. I mean, it is a little weird. Obviously, George didn't think about all of this because the whole story, it's clearly like he didn't think that. But yeah. U.S. needs a holiday with mandatory voting. Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. It's completely horrible that we have voting on a work day, and so the people that can't afford to take off don't end up voting. Of course we need it. Of course we need it, or to move it to the weekend. Either one. But yes, absolutely screwed up in America that we don't have that. Every plot hole that's out of character could be solved with, a faceless man did it. It's true. It's true. I did read George's new not a blog post. Yeah. He does talk about the world building thing with Mad Max. Were the others astronauts, cracking voices, radio, stabbing, collecting samples? How bad would be the backlash if this was the twist? What's funny is I do think that the backlash would be bad, but I do think that it's, you know, somewhat this, and I don't mean like astronauts, but I do think that like their protective suits are there. Like that, you know, like that they're wearing some sort of suit, and that they're puncturing the suit, which just causes them to like completely kind of melt. I mean, they definitely talk about the others wearing armor, like they're definitely wearing something, and they're, you know, it gets punctured with the dragon glass, and then everything, there's like a hissing, and it's like, like I definitely think that like George was thinking about them having some sort of like pseudo technology on them. Now, you know, and that's, of course, I believe the whole thing is kind of Planet of the Apes, that there was this previous advanced world. And keep in mind that like having the whole world be Planet of the Apes is it's not like that's Wheel of Time too, right? Like the previous societies are like advanced, and then they go back to the Middle Ages, and because everything's a circle. Like it's not like other fantasy isn't doing Planet of the Apes, but Yeah, I think Ice and Fire is Planet of the Apes. It's weird though that we're like that the fandom that a lot of the fandom is in this like, oh no, it can't be sci-fi. And you're like, but like so much other fantasy has already done that. Like it's not like it's huge. Like Thundar the Barbarian, Conan the Barbarian, like Wheel of Time, like Krull, like there's lots of people have done this. So it's just, not to mention George has done it a half dozen times in his other stories, like in the House of the Worm, so, or Dying of the Light or whatever, so yeah, I mean, I do think that that's what's going on. Now, George, I don't think George would ever like reveal it like that, like so obvious. I think it would be a little ambiguous. So, but yeah, people would be angry. People would be really angry about it. I mean, people were angry about like the end of The Village. There's another one where it's like, oops, we were wrong. It was Earth all along, same thing at the end of The Village. Mm-hmm. Uh, uh, uh. Okay. Tysha's not the lie. The lie was letting Tyrion think his love was reciprocated in the same way and intensity. So that's the other thing, is that like, say Tyrion, like for this to be like true, Jaime would have to think that Tyrion was sitting around being like, I know no one will love me, but at least my brother like hired me that sex worker the one time, and for 2 weeks I felt really good once. That was such a great delusion that he told me, that ended with a gang rape of her and me being forced to participate in the gang rape. Like there's no, like I saw a documentary on this one band where as a joke, this was this like little band in New York City. When they had shows, like 4 people would show up. There was nothing. It was just like 4 friends of theirs would show up. And so as a joke, this flash mob decides to like learn all of their songs and all of their lyrics and show up to one of their shows. And so out of nowhere, this band that's like used to playing like empty rooms has like 500 people in this venue. It's packed and they're all screaming and singing along. And afterwards they like talked to the band members who were duped, because for that moment while they're on stage, they were like, this is fucking incredible. Oh my God. And then afterwards they were like, oh God, they were really embarrassed. Like they were the butt of the joke. It was this like horrible feeling. And then one of them was like, well, at the same time, like I look back at that one moment of happiness and I was like, oh my God, that was pretty incredible. And so, that's what this is sort of like trying to claim, that like this lie of Tysha being in love with Tyrion made Tyrion happy for 2 weeks, and therefore he loves Jaime for that lie. However, no one would ever actually look at that situation and think that, because it ended with a gang rape. Like that's the thing, that like there's no loving anybody for any fucking thing. Look, I'll tell you, man, if you want to spoil any fucking situation where people are going to be loving each other and feeling good about each other and thanking each other, throw a gang rape in the middle of it, right? Like it's a great way to fucking ruin the goddamn situation. There's no way that Tyrion is loving Jaime, and there's no way Jaime would ever believe that, because no one is delusional enough to believe that someone would be like, gee, thanks you were part of a situation that ended in a gang rape. Like no one. It's just like outrageously ridiculous. Did you know Nerdrotic watches your videos? I know he watched my breakdown of George's I know he watched my video of my breakdown of George's progress on the Winds of Winter. And I know he knew enough to say that he hates my politics, which I always say is ridiculous, because like for those that you would watch me, you know that like my politics are like just pretty common liberal beliefs, right? That like, you know, it'd be nice if the US like had a system more like Denmark, like, you know, nothing really extreme. So like, it just kind of shows like he hates my politics because he's a Christian nationalist or something. That's my guess. I mean, he is from Texas. You know, chances are he's a Christian nationalist and feels good about bashing Brie Larson because he thinks it's going to bring about you know, a Christian state. You know, that's, you know, just talking to, you know, if you had a Christian state, man, we would just have so many better comic book movies under the Christian state. But I know he's at least seen that video, and he knows enough about me to know that like I'm a liberal. That's about it. But I'm sure he's a busy guy. I'm sure he doesn't watch my stuff too much, you know. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. My cousin's wife had to get one because her baby literally barely had a skull. If we were in a conservative state, she would have carried a term. Yeah, it's really screwed up right now, especially in Texas. It's and the fact that they're trying to prosecute and literally put people in jail for this, like convicting people of homicide and stuff like that. It's really fucking crazy that America has hit this point. It's I don't know why any woman would go to college in Texas. You know, like how are any of the Texas universities on the liberal islands going to when I say the liberal islands of, like, you know, Dallas, Houston, Austin, you know, Santa Fe, or I mean San Antonio. I don't know how they'd survive. Like why would anyone go to college in Texas? You know. The lie. Jaime is a good brother. Tyrion thought so. Let me think about that one. It's not bad. Not bad. Hold on. The problem is I'm thinking about the wording of the for a lie. Because it should be like Tyrion loved me. Tyrion believed a lie, you know, or believed the lie that. But it's weird because Jaime also says that, oh, I was a good brother to him, except for that one time. So Jaime does believe that he's a good brother. He thinks that one time, but like, which is also weird because Jaime's like, I'm a good brother except for that one little thing, but later that little thing is big enough that he feels necessary to break Tyrion out of prison and confess it. But it's like, so clearly it wasn't a little thing. So he should never think that I was good to him. He shouldn't preface everything by saying I was good to him. He should be like, he thinks I was good to him, you know? for a lie. But the thing is, he loves me for a lie. Like the lie made him love him. He loved me because he believed the lie. Because he believed the lie of me being a good person. Oh, we're back with Roth. Who the hell keeps trying to call in? I mean, it's Dragon Demands was trying to call in, but I've got way too many super chats and things to talk about right now because Dragon Demands, he takes a little time, so that's why. Go Celtics and third-party abortions. Preston for president. Oh, what? I'm not sure what third-party abortions are, but all right, man. All right. I mean, I'll talk about abortion all day long if you like. You know, I don't see. The thing is, it's getting really bad because for Europeans, it's not just abortion. They're going after birth. They're going after in vitro fertilization. They're going after birth control, all sorts of things, and so it's like I don't understand why anyone like do not want to have sex. like do not like sex because they're trying to make it so it's harder for you to have sex. I don't know why. Like, I mean, I guess to people that don't have any sex, you're losing nothing or something, and so it doesn't matter to them. But like to everybody else, it's like, why would you be voting for the party that like removes your ability to have sex, like reproductive freedom? Oh, can you comment on Quentin fanfic chapter about the size of the dragons, burned pyramids becoming cracked and broken, dragons slurping raw meat? I mean, it's a little ambiguous about how large the dragons have become, right? By the time Quentin gets on them. But I think we were just going with things that we'd seen previously in the the story. So we know that the one pyramid collapses. That's Rhaegal had made his lair, and so we know that like the dragons are large enough for them to be like heavy of some in some sort, or at least the fire or something caused the mortar to weaken or something. So at least like the dragons are heavy to some degree, and so the fact that like one pyramid collapsed, we put in that Quentin was fearful that the floors above would perhaps collapse with the other one. But I'm trying to think like how heavy is a dragon? Like how many pounds is Drogon? Has anyone figured this out? Drogon, what? Oh, teenage Drogon is only 200 pounds? Drogon's size. Some people say minimum 500 pounds. So I could see like 500 pounds, in a condensed space, maybe causing some problems with floors. Especially maybe, if he's crawling into a pyramid and hitting some sort of beam or whatever that does support or something like that. Now, let's see, burning burning castles and the stone. How does that work? Can you burn down immediately? Like high temperatures? I think it's the high temperature can affect stonework. And so that can cause like mortar and stuff like that to like loosen and crack and stuff like that. So that's how things can fall apart if there's if there's fire involved. So I don't think it's out of like when George put in that like a pyramid had collapsed. Considering that like a dragon was living there and is spewing fire, and he weighs 500, 600 pounds in a single concentrated area. Maybe he hit a supporting beam of some sort. Like I don't necessarily think it's outrageous to talk about like pyramids collapsing or things like that. But I didn't think about the size of the dragon. I just kind of copied what George was doing before. The dragon's slurping raw meat. Do they slurp the raw meat? Don't they cook it every time and then slurp it? Or is this the idea that he has like half a body in his mouth and kicking around? I mean, does he only cook? Is that the big thing? Like he should have been cooking all of these people first, because he bites down on the one guard beforehand and like eats him, and we hear and yes, like within the mouth things got very hot, but he didn't flame the rest of the body. So like, I think like Kago being, or Pretty Maris being half a body is consistent with how he was eating bodies in the Dragon Tamer chapter. So I don't think anything's off there, because the thing is the dragon, as he's eating it, it's getting cooked anyway. I mean, that's what happens with the guard in the windblown in the Dragon Tamer chapter. So, okay, let's see here. Real talk: are there penguins in A Song of Ice and Fire? So, yeah, I imagine there would be. But here's the thing about penguins, right? Penguins on Earth exist from the South Pole up until the equator, but they don't exist anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. There's no penguins in the Northern Hemisphere. So, the idea is that we're in the Northern Hemisphere of Planetos. And so, yeah, I assume that at some point when you go south on Southaros, you're eventually going to pass the equator and you're going to start seeing penguins. Like, I'm assuming that that's going on. It's weird that they talk about these big dragon trips in the world of Ice and Fire and them never finding the end of Southaros and stuff. And it's just going on and on as an endless forest, which is weird. But I would imagine that there's definitely got to be penguins. But I just think they're so far away that no one's ever brought one back. And we're but it wouldn't surprise me if somewhere along the line, like, that there'd be a penguin of some sort. Trying to think like where the most likely place would be. Because I mean, if penguins can be like as far north as whatever the Galapagos, I suppose like if you go along the coast of Southaros, like past the equator, you'd eventually start running into some islands that might have some penguins on them. That's my guess. My son, by the way, is obsessed with penguins. Always has been. Loves penguins. Wait, you're saying John isn't Jesus? I think in the story it's set up that John is supposed to be seen as Jesus by many characters. And I think we're supposed to be fooled as readers into thinking that John is Jesus. Like, obviously, like, if we're going with the show, Jon is resurrected, and there was every opportunity. I mean, at least in the show, Melisandre thinks that Jon is the chosen one, but you had every opportunity for the wildlings and everyone around them to like follow Jon with religious fervor. Instead, they decide to follow Jon because they see him as a really great military leader, even though he's not really that. But that's why that's the reason they kind of like veered away from a very obvious direction to go. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, you saw someone supernaturally come back from life from the dead. Why wouldn't? Like, it's just very, very odd that there wasn't a religious cult surrounding him. But you know, I think you're supposed to think it, and then, like in the show, there'd be some subversion that, like, oh, this causes more division, because now he's trying to make peace with Daenerys, and still people are supporting him, and she doesn't believe that they'll ever support her because they're all in on him or something. But I think that was probably George's original plan, that Jon is you're fooled into thinking that Jon is Jesus, and then it turns out he's not. You know, I think the show very probably followed, I mean, George's basic plot points originally. I think George has probably changed his plot points quite a bit, but you know. Oh, I saw something that, like, time traveling Bran influenced Jaime to do it at Harrenhal. There is a question of, like, how did Jaime get that dream? What's the significance of that dream? The Kingsguard has more vacation days than the average American because Westeros is England and the US Euro folk have at least 30 vacation days. Yeah, it's a real problem with America as well, is that we have very few vacation days. I do okay as a government employee, I will say, but like a federal employee, once you do 15 years in federal service, gets 28 vacation days a year on top of the 11 federal holidays. So I do pretty well. I'm not, but the fact that, like, I have to be like, I'm a best case scenario for American workers as a federal employee. Almost every American is getting, 10, maybe 15 vacation days. If the others were advanced, they wouldn't use swords. I mean, it's a good point. Like, why aren't they using guns or whatever? I mean, it's funny that entertainment, we always have to come up with reasons that people are still using swords. Like Highlander, like, everybody uses swords because they're trying to cut off heads. Star Wars, everyone's using swords because somehow it's better with the Force. Like, we all think swords are cool, but so I'm trying to think of a few more where people are just using swords anyway. So why are the others using swords? I don't know. Maybe they're scared that, like, using guns would, like, cause their spacesuits to puncture or something. It's just, like, too much. I don't know. Dowdy had a problem with Brie Olson. Yeah, I know. I accidentally, before, when I was talking about Brie Larson, I said Brie Olson. Brie Olson is an old porn star. Nerdrotic was a meth dealer. LOL. Probably kind of looks like it, doesn't he? I'm talking about Tyrion's misunderstanding duty for love with with Jaime his entire life. Not a single incident. Fits Jaime's story pretty well, I thought. Um, you have to explain this one. I'm not quite getting it. I mean, I'll look out for more. I mean, you've done a million super chats, but I'll just keep looking out for what you're saying on this. Is birth control still legal in Texas? It is currently, but they there's definitely discussions about this. I mean, first they start going after RU46 and then morning after pill, and eventually they go after the pill because keep in mind that like if one is accepting things like life beginning at conception, you can't have the regular birth control pill. That would just be that'd be gone. Because there is conception occasionally with the birth control pill. Isn't Israel doing third-party abortions right now? I guess. I mean, I guess bombing people. You're gonna hit some pregnant women. Not harder to have sex, harder to have kids. Oh, I mean, like, yeah, you can. I mean, but you're not going to if you don't have birth control, like you don't have birth control options, like people aren't gonna have sex with you. Like it's just, I don't know why people want this kind of situation. Going after IVF is crazy, though. I have to say that is the not that there's any logic to right wingers, but like that is the logical progression of it, right? Like if one is declaring that fertilized fertilized eggs have personhood, then you'd have to go after all IVF because like that's how IVF works is you fertilize a whole bunch of eggs and then you examine each one for viability and then you throw a bunch into the womb and you hope one impregnates, right? And so the rest are just thrown out. And so now like you're just like, what do you do? It's so that's why it's like such a ridiculous thing to like start with the concept that life begins at conception. It's such a ridiculous kind of thing to start with. And once you press people on it, they crumble because you're like, oh, so you want to ban IVF? Oh, no. Well, then how do you explain your belief? Oh, because you have none. That's the whole thing. But you're right that it's something that even like the politicians realized was so unpopular that they started like running from it after they did it. But after Alabama did it, but it stands to reason why they would do it. There's a problem with the recording of Tyrion 3. You'll have to re-record it. You forgot to use your French accent for Dario. Yeah, I thought about that. Every time I do like the weird foreign accents, I always like kind of go to the same like not from anywhere foreign accent that I kind of throw in there. And for a while I was doing Dario with French, but I think I went away from it because I think I'd already done Coley Aquinas, who's Tyrashi, And so I was like, I guess I'll just do that kind of general foreign accent again. But I understand that the French, Dario being French is a much better accent. Do dragons have hollow bones? They should, shouldn't they? I mean, how are you supposed to fly unless you have hollow bones? I don't think anything could fly without hollow bones. I mean, you're right that conservatives are being cucked here because, like, if they're trying to ban birth control in America, we're now getting cucked by the rest of the world who gets to have sex all the time, and everyone would just like go to liberal places where they can have sex with liberal men. You know, you literally are, as a conservative, cucking yourself by like being against birth control and being against abortion. Because like what like most women are not going to have sex with you if you're honest and say like, oh yeah, no, by the way, like, you know, I'm against birth control and I'm against abortion. Most women are pro-choice. So like, and you bring it up, and I guarantee you the women will run. Okay. Like it's a pretty big issue. It's a pretty big issue to people. Right. So they'll find some liberal guy and he'll have sex with the liberal guy. So you are cucking yourself by being against abortion and being against birth control. Oh yeah. The pyramid burns and dance, doesn't collapse. But he doesn't talk about the crushing of in the Barristan chapter. Doesn't he say? Dun, dun, dun. It says here in the Queen's Hand chapter, the pyramid of Haskar has collapsed into a smoking ruin, and many of that ancient line lie dead beneath the blackened stones. So the rain had drowned the worst of it, but wisps of smoke rose from the smoldering ruin that had been the pyramid of Haskar, the great black pyramid of Erizidin, where Rhaegal had made his lair, hulked in the gloom. Men were still pulling corpses from the pyramid of Haskar. So, I mean, like, Rhaegal had gone to Haskar, made it his lair, it got all burned up, it collapsed, and then he left and he went to the pyramid of. He went to a different pyramid, yeah? Am I remembering the story incorrectly? I mean, that this Haskar pyramid collapses? Yeah, also, what the fuck? You real wait, look at the Clegane bros. They're way too big to sit any horse. You would need a really big horse. George also has people riding double. It shouldn't be riding double and things like this. Like riding double is something you just can't do over long distances and stuff like that. But like he's 8 foot. He's what? He's 8 feet tall. What's the heaviest person for horseback riding? I mean, I'll tell you that as a person who's 215 pounds, I make a lot. Like I have to be on the largest horses they usually have. They just like do not want to put people my size on. Most places like horse. I'm just looking this up now. They don't allow 300 people over 300 pounds to ride horses at their whatever ranches, at their barns. The Shire horse can carry up to 485 pounds. So maybe if you could get like just this massive, massive horse, right? Because how much would the mountain weigh? 8 feet tall and enormous. He would. I'm just thinking like he would have to be. I mean, he might be like he would be like maybe even like approaching 400 pounds. I'm just thinking like. Oh man, yeah, it's weird that they would have to have specially made horses. You know, it's like special, like the biggest of the breeds. You couldn't just like grab any random horse. He slurps pretty Maris, and after her he slurps pretty Maris, and for her to be recognizable, she can't be charred. The dragon gets sick eating raw meat at the start. Well, he's the parts that's recognizable is the part outside of his mouth, was what I'm saying. Like the stuff in his mouth is charring, and then the pretty Maris part is like outside. That's recognized as outside. Because what I'm talking about is like in the Dragon Tamer chapter. He closes his mouth over the guy's head. Let me bring up the. So, for example, this is the thing that's weird, is that I don't think a dragon can eat raw meat. Or at least later on, a dragon cannot eat raw meat. I understand that in Karth, the little dragons weren't eating the raw meat, but here we say the sheep was let's see here. The crossman was fumbling around another quarrel as dragon's teeth closed around his neck. The man wore the mask of the brazen beast, the fearsome likeness of a tiger, as he dropped his weapon and tried to pry apart Viserion's jaws. Flames gouted from the tiger's mouth. The man's eyes burst with soft popping sounds. I mean, I don't know how he knows that. I mean, this is ridiculous, but like, and the brass around them began to run. I mean, I don't understand this because, like, I mean, I guess so this is a metal extension for a headphone, but let's say this is the guy's head. Okay, I'm imagining his head. Well, first when I read it, I imagined the dragon coming down like this and going cold. But then how is he seeing the eyes pop and the brass running if the head is already in the mouth? So it must be the other way, that the dragon closed around his neck sideways. Oh, George, this paragraph I don't think makes sense. The crossbow was fumbling for another quarrel as the dragon's teeth closed around his neck. The man wore the mask of a brazen beast, the fearsome likeness of a tiger. Why are we talking about the mask when the dragon's teeth just closed around his neck? I mean, unless he somehow, but I can't imagine the dragon's teeth coming in and closing around this way and not getting his face. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, the dragon's head is too big to close around the neck this way, sideways, right? Or like, and if it was that, he'd say it closed around his body. So the dragon must have come in and like taken his thing at the top, but then the description of his face and the mask and his eyes popping, this shouldn't be visible. So he drops his head, he drops his weapon, and he tries to pry apart Viserion's jaws, which means his brain isn't cooked yet. And then all of a sudden, the man's eyes burst with popping sounds, and the brass around them began to run. How does he know that when the dragon has dropped around his neck? But the dragon tore off the hunk of flesh and then gulped it down. The burning corpse collapsed on the floor. Whatever the case, it's very clear that the dragon can cook what's inside his mouth and not cook what's outside. Because look, the rest of, it gulped it down as the burning. I mean, I guess the rest of the corpse started burning, but he's very clearly like alive, and then what's inside gets charred, and that's the end. So I don't think there's any problem with like Maris. Like he's got half of the body he bit off, and he's burning the stuff inside, and the rest is fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Anyway, that's a really weird thing now that I'm thinking about it. How is he commenting on the mask when the mask is inside the dragon's mouth? And the eyes popping when the mask is inside, when the eyes are inside the mouth. Only joking. Love the chapter. Akira has no dick. This is I think I've told this story a ways back, but when I was in college, and keep in mind that like I think I've mentioned before, like anime had not really hit mainstream yet. So I had seen anime because I'm a dork, and I was well familiar with Akira. And when I was in college, they were showing Akira at like the artsy film place. So I convinced my friends to go, and Akira uses this mechanism that when sound is incredibly loud, all of a sudden it goes silent. And so, things are crashing, but when it's a huge explosion, like a nuclear bomb, they use silence, right? And so things are going, it's a loud movie. And there's a moment where it gets really loud, and then Akira appears, and it's silent. And of course, Akira appears, and he's kind of like a Ken doll. And I remember like, it's loud. And then all of a sudden it's silent. And my buddy, Jeff from college, is like, yo, Akira's got no dick. And like the whole theater, like he wasn't expecting the entire sound to drop out. And so the entire theater just hears him go, Akira's got no dick. Did Quentin form a bond or just nettles Viserion? I think at the moment he does not have the same bond as Daenerys or Targaryen. I think he's nettling. Of course, like him having these weird hallucinations about feeling a connection, and the dragon like weirdly allowing him to like get on his back kind of like goes against this, but like we're kind of keeping it a little ambiguous at the moment. Maybe it's not really decided yet, how much of a bond he has or whatever, but yeah. It's certainly going to be an issue later. Like I don't think going forward Quentin is ever getting on a dragon without it being full and fed. That maybe he thinks he's going to have a bond, but that it's nettling, it's nettles, There should be penguins at the Sea Lord of Bravos' palace. Yeah, maybe we can get some penguins in there somehow. It's certainly possible to get some penguins in there. I think we can come up with it. Did I tell? Oh my God! I love penguins. Oh my gosh! Did I tell you? Oh. So, the my son is he's 4.5. So naturally he's like the most incredible cute thing in the world, and naturally because he's 4.5, he's also an absolute dickhead. But he does have like this incredible sense of empathy, I believe, towards penguins, and not people or any other animal, but penguins. And so there's this one Pokemon. Yeah, it's this one. So my son is watching Pokemon, and we think he's going to get really excited because this Pokemon arrives on screen, and it's a penguin Pokemon. You know, it's got an ice cube on his head, but you know, it gets in a battle, and at some point, it loses the battle, and the ice, it's you know, he takes a hit. It's anime, so it's like, and he like falls, and the ice like shatters off of his head. And my son, he was just traumatized. He's just bawling and crying for like, and I'm talking like a good hour. He was just like, oh my God. It was like the worst thing in the world. He's like, I don't want the penguin to get, no. And we try to explain in the rest of the episode, the penguin like runs off, goes back to the ocean. The ice cube reforms and he floats back to his home island with all of his friends and family. Like it's a happy ending for the penguin. And we like try to explain that everything, like the penguin wasn't hurt. And he's just like, no, like this moment of like the penguin flying back and having the ice cube shatter off of his head. He was so hurt and traumatized by the whole thing. It was the worst. It was the worst. So it was the worst for him. That gets a downvote? Fuck you guys. Go on your alt accounts and fucking downvote me again for penguins. Jesus fucking, what the fuck? Oh man. Let's see here. Jackie makes a good point that people cuck themselves and then complain about male loneliness epidemic. Yeah, it's they're certainly related, and it's funny that like there's this whole thing now, like, oh, you know, something needs to reconcile here, and it's like, yeah, you know, people got to start coming around to understanding that other people exist and to empathize. It's funny that a lot of this discussion, it always comes down to like, oh, women somehow need to forgive men and just for their faults and just tolerate them rather than like men becoming better people, you know, like, yeah, just how about this? You know, if you're a good person, you know, it's pretty easy to have sex. It's pretty, you know, the thing is like, as I get older, you know, I didn't realize it at the time, you know, when I was a young man and insecure and like, and whatever. And back, of course, when I was a young man, like young women were stupid too. But like, as I get older, like it's so easy to be like an adequate man. Like the number of men in the world that are just like atrociously bad and horrible and red flags for women is insane. It's insane. So like just like getting like crossing this incredibly low bar of being like a good catch is actually like it's incredible. Like you just have to not be an absolutely atrocious human being. Like just it's so low. The bar is so low, and yet so many people just can't. They just can't do it. They're just like, no, I have to be atrocious. Like, oh man, why can't I get laid? Like, oh my God. Like, it's so easy. It's so easy. Just be somewhat, you know, sympathetic, empathetic person, you know. All of over analyzing needs to be re-recorded because the Rogue Prince music is missing. Sure, I still hear it in my head, but it's not the same. That is true. That is true. Oh, oh man. If only. What do I do eventually? How long I get? Once I have all these over analyzings. Um, mm, 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 mm. I'm only one woman. I can say, as a woman on my own, once impregnated, my baby's already happening. I don't judge. I can only do myself here. Yeah, that's why that's why it's your choice. That's the whole thing. That's why it's your choice. No one's going for mandatory abortion. No one's. It's all about your choice. Um, Preston riding a horse would be like me on one of those horse machines you put in the quarter at the mall. Um, yeah, I actually do like horse. I actually done a fair bit of horseback riding in my life. Not recently, but I did quite like it. Um, yeah, Trey the Explainer goes pretty regularly. He's really into it. Was there a time in history when people rode ostriches and emus like in joust? I don't think so. But can you ride an ostrich? Oh my god, people can. It's possible to ride ostriches. Holy shit. Wow. I just don't think so we read it. I mean, ostriches are horrible mean creatures. But the uh the thing is horses weren't even that useful until people came up with the stirrup. We wrote about this in the Tyrion chapter, but you kind of had these like everything in like carriages and chariots and stuff like that. So I don't know if like you kind of needed an animal of a certain size and dexterity to work. I think ostrich. I don't know how much you could haul. All right. So if affirms my thesis, George R. Martin doesn't spend nearly as much time on this as we do. No, he doesn't. And it's funny, like it's funny doing the rereads and everything over time. And um, I mean, this is anecdotal. I haven't done any like hard data on this, but it does tend to be that I think that most mistakes I find are in um, the early part of a Game of Thrones, and then I find a lot of mistakes in A Storm of Swords, and there's a few mistakes in A Dance with Dragons. I mean, that last one was from A Dance with Dragons, but it does seem to be like the speed that George writes, the more mistakes there are, which is understandable. Um, like A Feast for Crows is the one where it's really hard to find. It's a very tight book. He spent a lot of time on it, and like he thought about it a lot. I'm sure there's mistakes, but it's just I can't think of as many. Um, Visible if the head isn't big enough to cover it all. Sorry about the pyramid, wrong there. I will tone down the nitpicks by 75%. I mean, I was thinking that maybe if the teeth go over and the teeth are spaced, that he could somehow still see the face in between the teeth. Is the idea? Um, or if the jaw doesn't quite close all the way or something, I'm, that might be it. Um, oh yeah, char some meat. There's got plenty of juices. It's true. He just does. They just don't char it all the way till like burnt to a crisp. Yeah. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, okay. Cooked meat mostly releases myoglobin, a little blood sometimes too. Quentin is so dead that if George R. R. Martin brings him back and wins, you know for a fact that he stole the idea for Preston. No, I genuinely think that like you don't. I mean, I've talked about this a million times, but like George is a gardener, and so he and he likes to keep his options open. And it's pretty clear that when you cut the chapter off before the person dies, and then when you retell the story through Arch and he cuts the story off before Quentin dies, and then when you have Quentin's body and it's unrecognizable, I'm not saying George made the decision on whether he's alive or not, but George was definitely keeping his options open. You know, this is why we talk about the Schrodinger's Quentin, which, I mean, I really think that like George didn't want to paint him, like he just gave himself the option. If I want to bring Quentin back, I can. If I don't want to bring Quentin back, I don't need to. That's that, you know. I genuinely believe that that is the case of it. You just don't do it. It's like having they never found the villain's body. Great, we can do a sequel if we want. You know, that's it. We're leaving it open. Oh, South Continent called Penguinos. Let the poor chap on. They're like a continent south of Sotheros called Penguinos. Wait, who are they? They're penguin. I don't think there's any penguin haters in the world. No one can possibly hate a penguin. Children's ability to understand yet not understand always amazes me. I mean, and that's the thing is like watching the scene because it was done in like this anime action style where like the penguin is like, you know, it was quite. I mean, I could understand why it was traumatizing for him. I wonder if there's a still of it happening. His name is Ice Q. The actual like scene. Oh yeah. You know, this is like the scene of like him just being like flying through the air, shattering, then lying there defeated. And then he gets up and like he runs off and it's just like traumatized. Like he's super embarrassed that his like true face is like shown. And it was just it was the most traumatic thing in the world. Most traumatic thing in the world. I think the male loneliness epidemic is the result of poor father figures in their life. A lot of our issues stem from bad parenting. I mean, you know, it could be. It's hard to, you know, it's you know, it's tough because like, you know, don't all of our problems like stem from like our parents like not doing things the best, right? But some people do talk about this that like, okay, people like why do people go online and seek out you know, weird whatever the sex trafficking dude in Romania guy, like why do they seek that guy out as somebody? And in another respect, I definitely think that like most of the people that follow Hassan Piker are like in that same sort of like looking for a male role model kind of thing. And it may, you know, there might be some things about as well though that, you know, there's an age difference between, a father and a son. So men often look to peer groups for examples of how to act, um, rather than to their fathers anyway. So it might just be that, like, this is a natural state of things that people always look to their peer groups, rather than their fathers. And now their peer groups are like finding weird, people online, the Joe Rogans and what. Um, but it's it's a weird thing, right? Because masculinity doesn't really mean anything. Like, it can be defined as anything you want, right? And so it's weird that like people seek out like being men, but like being a man is not, like, it's completely plastic. Being a man could be anything. So, but yet everyone desires, like, or men desire to be manly, but no one knows what being manly is. So it's like this weird race for something very strange and like changeable. I know. Damn, Preston, how do you really feel about ostriches? So, no, it's not that, like, first of all, obviously all ostriches should be left alone and allowed to thrive. But if you're ever around an ostrich, don't be around an ostrich. I was once in Uganda, and I volunteered at this like zoo for a day, and I went in and fed it. Like, we went and fed the animals, and like, you've in order to feed the zebras and the ostriches, you can't just go, because the zebras and the ostriches live in the same area. It'll be perfectly safe to go up and feed the zebras, but the ostriches are going to come over and just start pecking you and attacking you. So you've got to get so you're in the back of a pickup truck with the food, and you ride at a certain speed that allows like the ostriches and the zebras to like get the food without them being able to like peck you. It's really weird. They're just mean. I mean, it's the same like camels. Camels are known for being like grumpy animals and things like that. Upcoming vacations planned with those 28 days. Unfortunately, like, it's really hard to coordinate. That's the one thing, is like, it's really hard to coordinate them when, so, because my wife isn't able to take off while she's doing training and things like that. So I don't have any vacations planned, which is sad. So I haven't taken a vacation in a long time. So building up the days. Everyone's warging. Baby Yoga's actually a shaved Ewok. Oh man, maybe. I don't believe that George R. R. Martin wasted one word. So I definitely went through a phase, like, when you first, and I'm sure all of you kind of had this, like the first time you read Ice and Fire, you have this assumption that Ice and Fire is like any other page turner like novel. And, it's really long, so you're trying to go through it fast. And it works going through it fast. It's fine, But then you discover the fandom, and you're like, no, if you go back and you check things, like, you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And people are pointing out different things, and you're like, oh, is Stannis really dead? And, someone pointing out, well, if you go back, like, the ships that Manderley is building, like, that's mentioned in Clash, it's mentioned against in Storm. And you go, oh yeah, the ships. Yeah. Oh my God. Like, George was really incredible, like, seeding that information. And then someone points out, oh, Larys is Sorella spelled backwards. Oh yeah. Oh my God, Sorella Sand. Oh, Dornish, Wait, and you start making these connections, and you realize that George put a lot of time into things. But then it only goes so far. Eventually you realize George R. R. Martin is a human being. He's not He's not inhuman, and he's filled. I mean, he's filled with like dropped plots and mistakes and everything. He's a genius, but geniuses are still flawed human beings. So, I think we're kind of at this point where we're kind of all sitting around laughing at like these little mistakes here and there. But it's still, this was after years and years of being like, oh, this is so great. The story is so tight. And then eventually kind of realizing like, wait a minute, no, it's not that perfect, So, but I would love it. Here's another thing is if had the Winds of Winter come out just a few years after Dance, and I because when Dance ends, I was just like, oh my god, this story is really genius. It's subverting expectations. I had someone post on one of my videos recently. They said, oh, had George successfully pulled off like Winds and Dream and ended the story, it would have been incredible because you would have had one of the most successful subversion of expectations after Storm, right? You think where the story is going after Storm. All these new characters are introduced, and then it wraps up, and you're like, oh, I totally didn't see that coming. Incredible. But he's not going to pull it off. So now Feast and Dance are historically going to be seen as like the books that had the story that got away from George and ruined everything, even though I love them, I love those books. But, you sort of start seeing the mortality of and the humanity of George. Like, so, can you elaborate on Larys equals cheese? Yeah, essentially Larys is, and I did a previous stream on this, but essentially Larys is a parallel to Varys, obviously, like their names rhyme. They're both Master of Whisperers. You're constantly guessing what they're doing and how they're scheming. They both have deformities of some sort, right? So you're obviously supposed to compare Larys and Varys. Varys is the guy who's hiding in the walls, who's spying on everything, who knows the Red Keep inside and out. And so if Varys knows the Red Keep inside and out, does Larys know the Red Keep inside and out? It's that's the connection. And so it's based on the parallel. But also like Larys, who is a professional torturer and confessor, tortures blood and is unable to get the identity of cheese. And that is also suspicious as hell. Like, how do you get to that point? Like, how you've been doing this your whole life and you couldn't get the identity of cheese? Like, really? Like, okay, and so that there's other things as well. You can kind of get into like who is responsible for blood and cheese. Does it really make sense? Does it really make sense to be Daemon? Does it really make sense to be Mysaria? Not really. And so you kind of say, well, who else is a schemer that would be responsible? Well, you're getting down to Larys, So it's now of course like Larys being cheese, like Larys needs to not have cheese moves fine. So the idea he doesn't have a club foot. So the idea is that Larys is faking his club foot. Of course, Varys is faking being a eunuch. And this is the whole like thing. So if Varys is faking being a eunuch, Larys is faking being a clubfoot, you can have Larys being cheese. That said, I don't think they're doing Larys versus cheese in the show. I mean, I'd love it if they did, but I don't think it's going to happen. Too obscure a theory. Had we been pushing it years ago, maybe they would have caught wind of it. Oh, I love how everyone is like, yeah, Jon is confirmed dead, but yeah, he's coming back, but aren't extending the same to Quentin. Yeah, no, I mean, it is a bit of hypocrisy there. And a lot has to do with like everyone assuming Jon is the main character and therefore, he must come back, that he's the one that the average reader is going to connect with, because the average reader is a young male, and John has a lot of chapters. He doesn't have the most chapters. Tyrion has the most chapters. I think Arya, it's Arya. I think it's Daenerys' second, Arya's third. John is actually fourth in the number of chapters. He might be third in the number of page count, though, because Arya's number of chapters is back when chapters were shorter. Well, John has a lot of pages and dance. So, but nonetheless, he's still seen as the main character because he has so many chapters and so much page time dedicated to him. I think, like 10% of the story or something. I understand being upset about not having a good dab in Joe Rogan streams to fill the void is cringe as fuck. I agree, but that's got to be the situation, right? My son has girlfriends despite my poor parenting. The thing is that, like, obviously even horrible people are able to get girlfriends too, but you got to look at like what you have to bring to the table. People are, if you have like, say you're a horrible person and you're really interesting, you're bringing something to the table. Say you're a horrible person and you've got money, you're bringing something to the table. Say you're a horrible, so you've also got to look at like what you have to offer. Like, it's not like Donald Trump isn't having sex. Like, he's a horrible person, or maybe, with whatever sex workers he has. I don't know if Melania is doing that, but, he's bringing money and power to the table for people. The thing is if you're an average person, like you're just the average person that, where you're not bringing much to the table, you kind of have to be a nice person, that's the whole thing. Hey Preston, I'm going to Asia for the first time in August. 15 days in Japan, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, Fukuoka. Whoa. And then flying to Thailand for 5 days, Bangkok. Have you ever been? Any recommendations? Must see. Man, what a whirlwind trip. So, for Japan, try to get out of Tokyo as quick as possible. Tokyo's a cool city to live in and such, but there's not actually very much to see as a tourist. You can go out and maybe party one night, and that's interesting and all, but honestly, there's not much to see in Tokyo. It's a big sprawling city. And so if you get out of Tokyo, Kyoto has the most to see, obviously. The big thing about Kyoto is to not overdo it. There's a whole bunch of temples. There's like 50 temples to see. Only go to 3 or 4 of them. Pick the best ones. Pick like the golden one or whatever. Like especially Asian people will recommend to you to try to go to like, oh, you've got to see all the 50 temples or whatever. No, don't do that. Oh my God, don't do that. Don't kill yourself. Relax in Kyoto. Limit yourself. Say, you know what? Let's just enjoy the day. See 4 temples. Do not try to see all the fucking temples. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just see 4 fucking temples. Be happy. Osaka also doesn't have that much, but it's a fun town to go out in. I'm trying to remember what's Fukuoka got. Because some people go to Fujiyoshida, which is I guess it's got some temples. It's got a big Buddha. That's pretty. I don't know. I've never been to Fukuoka, but nonetheless. Now let's see. 5 days in Bangkok is way too many days for Bangkok. Okay. Bangkok, you can see all the temples and everything Bangkok in 2 days. So you'd it'd be nice to hit a beach if you could get to a beach real quick. The closest one that I would recommend is called Koh Samet. I would not go to Pattaya. I mean, people do go to Pattaya. They're trying to transform Pattaya from sex tourism area to place for general tourism. And it's true, a lot of families go to Pattaya, but Pattaya is the closest beach. But I would recommend, if you can, to try to go to Koh Samet, if you can get there fast enough. It's but yeah, you're having a whirlwind trip. But there is a lot to see in Bangkok, but it only takes maybe like 2 days to see like the main palace and the big Buddha there. I don't know if you're gonna hang out on Kosan Road and stuff and go partying. There's plenty of that there. There's plenty, but I do recommend, the entire point of going to Thailand is to go to the beach. So you want to try to hop over to Koh Samet if you can. But that's about it, you know. But man, you're gonna have a great time. You're gonna have a great time. Um, oh, messed up my super chat. See above. Stuart. Let's see here. Preston, do you think the fact that Varys is a professional spy hiding in the walls and know everything inside and out makes him more trustworthy character? I think he's a trustworthy character in the two honest scenes we see with him. And when I talk about the two honest scenes, I mean Arya 3 of Game of Thrones, where he's talking to Illyrio and he has his assessment of everything. And like him speaking to Kevin at the end, I think he's trustworthy in what he says there. Do I think he's trustworthy to like the characters around him? Like, do I think he's trustworthy to Ned? No. Like, he was clearly lying to Ned about Sir Hugh and trying to get Ned to feel paranoid against the Lannisters. Do I think he was trustworthy to Tyrion? No. Like, I think he was lying about things like what was going on with Sir Balon and the Red Wine twins and who he was asking to have appointed here and there. I think he was definitely lying about all of that. I think he's probably the one that put the chest in front of the crossbow and influenced Tyrion to kill his dad. I definitely don't think he's trustworthy to the characters around him. I think he is an Aegon supporter. I think he's honest during these periods where he's allowed to be honest. But I don't think he's trustworthy to anybody. We'll see if he's trustworthy to Jon Con, or Aegon, That's he's saying Dany is fourth, Jon is second in the chapter count. Okay, so it's like it would go Tyrion first, Jon second, Arya third, Dany fourth. But again, I think it switches around with page counts and such. So it's just a Jon was losing for a while, but he's given 13 chapters in Dance that really like bumps it up. And then Dany gets such a low one because Dany has so few chapters in Clash. In fact, she doesn't even have that many chapters in The Storm of Swords. So she only has 5 chapters in Clash, and she has 7 in Storm. So it's those 2 books that kind of really hurt Dany's count. Oh, recent spoiler may confirm that Larys is responsible for Blood and Cheese. Vindication! Oh, Osaka is like the BDSM and rave capital of East Asia. I did not know that. I mean, it's been a long. I mean, I haven't been to Osaka in Jesus since the last time I was at Osaka was in 2001. So a lot has changed, but Osaka is always known for being a little edgier than Tokyo. Like for a while, and things change because it's been a long time. But I remember Osaka is known for where all the comics come from, the Japanese comedians. Um, they're Osaka people were known for being a little more direct. So it was really weird. So me and my Tokyo friend, we were out in Osaka and we were trying to chat up some women. And I remember one girl was like to my friend, like, you talk like a girl. And he's like, what? And she's like, you talk like a girl. And it was weird because it was like she was like getting on something because like the way people in Tokyo speak is more gender neutral than in the rest of Japan. There's little things about Japanese that like for instance, like if you want to say like I want to eat sushi in Tokyo, you would say watashi wa sushi o tabetai. But if you're somewhere else and you want to be more manly, you might be like ore wa sushi o tabetai. So you'd use like ore instead of watashi because watashi is a gender neutral term. Like women say watashi wa, while like ore wa is like only a man can say ore wa. So like he was like using words that were gender neutral, but then for her to be like, you talk like a girl, it's just it was just such a weird direct thing. It's not like, huh, you talk funny, I'm gonna keep that to myself. She like straight up said to him like, you talk like a girl. It was very weird, very weird. And granted, these are little anecdotes, and I don't know how much they're true, today, or like if it was just we ran into some weird girls or whatever. But it was just there are those little differences that you hear about because I'd heard the kind of stuff that like that they have their own way of doing things. And we are. I don't know what serving cunt in Japan means. Preston, planning a trip to Branson, Missouri. Any tips? I have never been to Missouri in my life. I'm sorry. I grew up in Kyoto, but went to raves in Osaka before I came to America. Huh, interesting. When I was in Japan, and keep in mind this was 24 years ago, every Japanese person would be like, you'd be like, what kind of music do you listen to? And like every Japanese person would be like, trance music. And you're like, you can't all be into trance music. That can't be your favorite kind of music. Like what's like, but it was just like the hip thing to say at the time. I'm into trance music. No one likes trance music. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Um, oh, how things change. How things change. Um, why would anyone go to Missouri? I suppose if you had work in St. Louis, you might have a reason. Um, I think Carmine goes there because it's like the closest big city every once in a while. uh, Japan, best places to travel while living there. I mean, I really had a good time in Fuji Yoshida. It was really beautiful. There's a lot to do there. I mean, you can climb Fuji, but you can also go bike riding and stuff. It was really nice. I lived in Kamata, which was like the south side of Tokyo. And so, I used to do like we would go to like Kawasaki and Yokohama and stuff just because it was kind of sometimes easier to go than like downtown. Um, but there wasn't too much that was crazy different there. I don't know. I mean, trying to think like any trips. I just kind of did that trip to. I went to a few villages and I did the trip to Kyoto, Osaka. Um, but I didn't see too much of the country. Huh. I love trance, but there is only one trance producer from Japan I know. Huh. trying to think of the most ridiculous place to travel to. South Sudan. You could go to Juba. The so once traveling, my wife and I once did a trip to Eritrea, and it was a great time. It was very hard to travel. It was very weird being there because they had they currency they exchanged on the regular market, and then there's currency you got on the black market, and it was kind of crazy. But I ran the only other travelers you'd run into in Eritrea were ones that would either, they were the types that needed to go, they were trying to go to every country in the world, or they were the type that only went to weird places. So I met this Japanese Brit guy. He was ethnically Japanese, grew up in Britain, and he only went to weird places. So he like went to Uzbekistan, he went to North Korea once, he went to Iran, and he was in Eritrea. And so you hear some crazy stories, but you do when you go to weird places, do occasionally find people, and it's kind of interesting. Go to Burundi. I've been to Burundi. Burundi. I had one of the fucking most awesome times ever in Burundi. Burundi, man, do they for a city that barely has power, where like they turn off everything at night, like, and it's just dark. That city knows how to party, man. They are a fun bunch in Burundi. I had a great time. It was really, really fun. But it's true about the man-eater crocodiles. So we went out. I went out with some friends that I was traveling with, and you go to the lake. Like a lot of people get drunk and then go to the lake. And being a foreigner, he was like, I'm going to take a dip. And he like goes in and swims. And all the Burundians are like, what are you doing, dude? Get out of the lake. Get out of the lake. And he's, what are you talking about? And they're like, no, like there's literally fucking crocodiles in the lake that'll kill you. Like, what are you doing? Like they all were screaming at him. Like, no, we go to the lake to hang out, but no one gets in the lake. Like, so he was like, he like almost died, like drunk, like after a night in Bujumbura. Because he'd gone to the lake and decided to go swimming drunk. Fucking crazy. It was good. It was, oh my gosh, but what a time. Someone here has a I love Eritrea bumper sticker. So here in DC has the largest Ethiopian Eritrean population outside of Ethiopia, Eritrea. So I see that kind of stuff. Like I see Eritrea, Ethiopia stuff constantly every day here in DC. But DC is very Ethiopian, so it's some fun stuff there. But I don't know. I mean, weirdly, some of the weird places that I've been where I didn't run that were the oddest to travel. I once went to Komoro, which that was kind of the weird one where like they're just not used to tourists, so they're just like, huh, what are you doing here? Like, and like I got at the airport and the woman's like, American passport. We don't get Americans. Like, what are you doing here? And I was like, just saying to see Komoro. She's like, oh, okay. And there weren't any hostels, and there's like one hotel, and it was a kind of weird time. It was weird because it's like I check into the hotel, and they're like, oh, so we have like one guest. There was like two guests in the hotel, and they're like, well, we can cook you like a dinner tonight if you like. And I was like, aren't there restaurants in the round? And they're like, no, like there's no, like, no, there aren't any restaurants. Oh, like everything kind of closes down at like 7. The power gets turned off in most of the city. We're like, okay, so, but you'll cook me dinner tonight. And he's like, yeah, we have a special. We can bring you like 4, he's like, I'll bring you like 3 like large like prawns. And, it's got a very nice sauce and everything. And I was like, oh, that sounds really, really great. And I was like, okay. So I wait for the meal, and it comes out, and it's not 3 prawns. It's 3 full-size lobsters. There was like a translation issue. And I was like, oh my God, you brought me 3 lobsters. So I had this dinner of 3 lobsters and a beer, and I was like, oh my God, what are they going to charge me? And luckily it was only like $40. And I was like, oh, phew, thank goodness. But yeah. Oof, try to be the only American in Japanese public school. That would be really weird because everyone's just going to stare at you constantly. Um, and just be like, "Oh my god, it's the foreigner." The only I mean, I imagine in like a generational change, like when I first lived in Taiwan, there were definitely not schools where like white people were enrolled in the public school, but now in Taiwan, there's like definitely like regular white people in the public schools, and like I'm not saying many, but you'll find in Taipei like in each public school like between 3 and like 20 white kids like from America like enrolled in Taiwanese public school just because now there's just so many foreigners. So they're slowly getting to this point where they're going to have like white Taiwanese citizens and stuff like that. Japan has a much more restrictive immigration than Taiwan, so it's kind of funny. So um yeah, that's quite normal, but they wanted to test English for me. Yeah, when I lived in China, we called them English leeches. So there's like making friends in a foreign country is kind of funny because like when I lived in Spain, I had no Spanish friends, but when I lived in Egypt, I had several Spanish friends. And so there's this odd thing about like being the local and being the foreigner. So when you're a foreigner, you have more in common with the other foreigners. So you kind of like bond and hang out together. But then like there's this issue of like what is the local, like the local has friends. So why, like what is the local getting out of a relationship with a foreigner? Now granted you're in school with them, so you go to class together and have extracurriculars and everything. But like there is this weird, like what is it? Like do they want to hang out with you because they're interested in foreign things and find it exotic? Do they want to learn English, which is often the case? And so a lot of times, like I'd find myself, like our group of friends would have like, when I lived in China, like a bunch of Chinese friends that like the only thing they wanted to do was practice their English. They didn't really have any interest in us. They didn't like us. It was very clear they had nothing in common with us, but they're like hanging out with us because they want to learn English. um, mm, mm. Oh, this is kind of what do they serve at Ethiopian restaurants? MRE meals. Um, I'm, I'm trying to get the pun here. Um, yeah. Uh, uh, uh. Like I feel really dumb for like missing the pun, but I'm sure there's the pun there. Um, Preston, out of all your countries you visited, where was your favorite cuisine? Hands down, my favorite cuisine is from Malaysia, and that is just hands down, like absolutely. But I will say it's a bit of cheating because Malaysia, they've essentially taken the best food from China, the best food from Thailand, the best food from Indonesia, and the best food of India, and they've melded it into a fusion. Um, and it's I love Malaysian food so much. It's so delicious. It's definitely my favorite kind of food. Um, the No, I understand that MREs are military rations, but I just thought that maybe there was like a city or something or a language in MRE. You know, because I mean, I get like you know, you're saying that they're like different weird pastes and curries that you can like out, but I was thinking that there must be some, there may be something, but um, because I was degraded. It mostly was mostly parents who never liked me. But when you're a child, it's really different with like, no, dude, that's crazy. I don't do that. I did meet one American beau fam. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the, yeah, I mean, it's a weird time, right? Cause when you're that age, you are looking to peers for what's normal. And if you don't have that, it kind of, it kind of, does something weird to you. I remember I have this, and it's, I mean, obviously I'm going to be raising my child as my children as like, foreign kids abroad, but like, I remember meeting this foreign service officer. I had an internship years ago where I was an intern at the embassy in China. And one of the foreign service officers, we were all in our early 20s at the time. We were grad school interns. So we're like between the ages of 23 and 26. And the one of the foreign service officers was like, "Oh, my son is like here for the summer from he's off for college. He doesn't know anybody. Can he hang out with you guys?" And we're like, "Sure." So he comes, this guy comes over. He's like 20, 21 years old. And we're hanging out. And keep in mind, the year is 2002. And he's like, "Oh man," we're talking about music. And he's like, "Oh man, I just found out about this great new band. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this band. They're called Pearl Jam. And I just fucking love them." And we just like all look at him like, what are you fucking talking? You think we've never fucking heard of Pearl Jam? You've just found out about Pearl Jam in the year 2002? Like what, like the whole room of people is like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Like, and it's like the look of like absolute like fear and insecurity and like oh and he's just like, "I'm sorry, and like it was just like this moment." And you realize, okay, he was raised abroad, you know, going from country to country every few years, and he never got like what, and he'd been in college for a couple of years, but like he'd never gotten like enough American exposure that where he was just like, huh, like didn't know what Pearl Jam was. And that, like for all of us to be like, to have this reaction, like, "You don't know what Pearl Jam is?" Like, and it like hurting him. And I just imagine like, you know, being an American, Valerie, like being American raised in a Japanese school, I imagine you have those moments where like Americans are like, "What?" Like, or, you know, and you're like, I'm sorry, I was raised in Japan." And in the reverse as well, like the Japanese kids the whole time are like, "What are you talking about? Like, you eat peanut butter and jelly? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?" You know, like something weird like that, you know? Um, yeah. I found this new book series called Ice and Fire. Anyone heard of it? Anyway, um, anyway, it is late. It's already 12:30. But thank you for all being with me. I'm gonna say goodbye. We actually, what the fuck is Pearl Jam? Well, if you're in a shy, Marwin. Anyway, thank you all. I'll talk to you guys soon. I guess next week is when the show begins. Later, man.